Monster Synthesis Master. Chapter 21, 40 Years in the Wastelands. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. I'm not joking. I really may die during this trip to Sand City, said Lin Ke as he stared straight at Forbes. Forbes also nodded hard. I know. I'm following boss there willingly. Of course, there was another half sentence at the back that Forbes didn't say. I may not necessarily die if I go to Sand City, but I'll definitely be eaten up whole by the army ants if I stay here. Since Forbes had made his decision, Lin Ke couldn't say much else. He turned around and said, pack your things and get ready to set off then. Forbes hurriedly began to pack their belongings. At the same time, Lin Ke returned to the cave and started to leave some instructions for Silver Queen Ant. To put it simply, they had two jobs only. The first was to guard Howling Ancient Castle well. The moment they discovered anyone trying to occupy the place, they were to drive the enemies away most firmly and resolutely. The second was to get the worker ants to go up and begin restoring Howling Ancient Castle. After witnessing the army ants' strong construction abilities, Lin Ke realized that they were fully capable of repairing the castle with their capabilities. He was going to Sand City with a mission this time, so he probably wouldn't be back in the near future. Hence, he gave the mission of rebuilding their home to the army ants. He believed that he would be able to see a brand new Howling Ancient Castle the next time he returned. Silver Queen Ant's feelers quivered up and down as it kept its master's instructions firmly in mind. Forbes, bring me an empty box. It didn't take long before Forbes trotted over with a palm-sized metal box in his hand. The box had been inside the medical kit and the logistics trunk. Since they were convenient for storing things categorically, Forbes had completely taken them apart. Their trip to Sand City this time was highly dangerous. The army ants had extremely strong capabilities and were suitable for use in various environments, so he had to bring some with him. Lin Ke stored more than 1,000 worker ants, soldier ants, and flying ants each into the box. When he was done, the metal box was already stuffed to the brim. When he replaced the lid on the metal box, dense and concentrated metallic collision sounds rang out from inside the box, causing goosebumps to break out all over Forbes's body. His body also felt numb and tingly. Lin Ke knocked on the metal box a couple of times, and the inside instantly quietened. All the army ants went into hibernation mode and curled up into metal water droplet shapes. There, you can keep it now. Forbes stubbornly pinched the metal box with a few fingers. He still didn't quite dare to make full contact with the metal box filled with army ants. It was only after he had carefully stuffed it into the backpack that he let out a long sigh of relief. When Lin Ke took a look at Forbes, the corners of his lips couldn't help but quirk upward slightly. Those that know what he was doing would be watching him place a box into a backpack, but those that didn't would have thought that he was a bomb dismantling expert. Those were just army ants, yet he is already so fearful. Who knows how scared he will be if he has to face other monsters with greater ferocity in the future. After I leave, get the worker ants to seal this entrance. I'll leave these mobile mechanical arms, medical kit, and logistics trunk on the ground for you as food. Lin Ke stretched out his index finger and tapped Silver Queen Ant's forehead lightly. Silver Queen Ant brushed its feelers lightly against Lin Ke's finger, somewhat reluctant to part with him. Howling Ancient Castle is under your care now. With these metal remains as nutrient provisions, he believed that another few thousand army ants would be born very soon. Lin Ke and Forbes exited the cave. The army ants lined up into neat and tidy teams at the cave entrance and bade farewell to Lin Ke. After Lin Ke turned around, the army ants immediately started to transport broken rock fragments and earth to seal the cave entrance. Lin Ke had reaped an unprecedented amount of rewards during his temporary stay at Howling Ancient Castle this time. Even as he walked down the secret tunnel, he still felt as though he was in a dream. As a veteran player, he knew very well what Wastelands Planet's hidden main scenario mission, as well as the A-level entrusted mission, signified. There were only 4 A-level missions in the whole of Wastelands Planet. In addition, the other 3 were segmented missions split from one main scenario. Only the hidden main scenario's mission chain was a complete one. Let's now take a look at the players that completed the A-level missions back then. The rich and bountiful rewards had straight up propelled the few of them to the top player combat rankings top few positions. Even when version 6.0 was released 6 years later, those few players didn't drop out from the top 10. From this, one could tell just how far-reaching the influence of the newbie planet's main scenario missions was. By obtaining the A-level entrusted mission, it was as if Lin Ke had rediscovered the novelty and passion that he had felt when he had first entered the game in his past life. "Boss, do we have any plans after we reach Sand City?" asked an out-of-breath Forbes, who was carrying the backpack on his back as he followed behind Lin Ke. Plans? Lin Ke had already drawn up a complete overall plan for Sand City after receiving the prince's A-level entrusted mission. He had it all planned out nicely. "My plan is that we'll get a change of clothes first, then have a feast after that." Forbes's eyes lit up, and he clapped and cheered. As expected of boss to be able to think of such a perfect plan. Under Forbes's tan skin was a mouth full of pearly white teeth. As he broke into a wide grin, Lin Ke felt that even the path in front of him had become a few notches brighter. As the corridor wasn't high enough for flight, Sand Condor followed behind Forbes and waddled from side to side on its 2 legs. A lord of the skies had been reduced to a domestic bird in a split second. 1. Perhaps it was because walking was too tiring, but Sand Condor glanced at the underground river running in the same direction as the corridor, and a bold idea suddenly came to its mind. Some time later, a shadow gradually slid past Lin Ke's peripheral vision. Sand Condor had actually taken a leaf out of a duck's books and was sitting in the water, paddling with its 2 claws. 2. It even turned to look at them, its line of vision sweeping across Forbes, Treasure Hunter Rat, and Lin Ke, respectively. Its eyes seemed to be saying, "Look at how free and relaxed walking is for Lord Condor here." Only Lin Ke knew what was really going on. Although Sand Condor looked very good swimming in the water, its 2 claws paddling in the water underneath its body certainly made for a very pathetic sight. "Boss, are you familiar with Sand City?" "It's my first time going to Sand City despite my age. Back then, I heard from my family that Sand City is a big city. Back then, my father had been determined to expand our pallbearer business all the way to Sand City, saying that we could earn a lot that way. For that purpose, we had even gotten our suits, sunglasses, and leather shoes ready. It was just a shame that later on, 1. Lin Ke understood that this wasn't Forbes thinking about things that saddened him again. Rather, this was his longing for the city that he had heard of countless times in the past. The nearer Forbes got to Sand City, the more he looked forward to it. It was just that. How was Lin Ke supposed to say this? Considering what they were going to face in the future, the real Sand City and the Sand City that Forbes was looking forward to were probably as different as night and day. "You hadn't left the desert before when you lived with the desert tribe in the past, right?" Forbes nodded repeatedly. Everything that he had heard about the outside world had been from others in the tribe. The tribesmen themselves had also heard about the outside world from traveling merchants that had passed by, rather than seeing it with their own eyes. Thus, they had conjured up fantasies and a sense of longing for the city. Lin Ke decided to use this opportunity to fill Forbes in about Wasteland's planet's history and the current political situation. "You know the reason why our planet is known as Wastelands, right?" Forbes knew about this part of history, so he hastily nodded and replied, "Yes. It's because 2 superpowers launched innumerable nuclear bombs on the Day of Reckoning, resulting in the whole planet's eco-environment suffering lethal destruction. To bear the effects of the Great War in mind, the survivors called this day the Day of Reckoning. They even started using a new calendar system. Our planet's name was also changed to Wasteland's Planet. What else do you know? I also know that when nuclear radiation destroyed the eco-environment, it also caused changes to take place in some people's bodies at the same time, allowing them to possess incredible powers. That was how the supernatural powers system was born. Aside from that, I also know about the Wastelands Gang, which is a union and combination of military groups, and the Machinery Holy Cult, which captures people to use them as batteries. I don't know about the rest. Lin Ke continued Forbes's conversation thread and said, after the Day of Reckoning, all the old rules and regulations were broken. A person's capabilities were what decided their power and authority, while resources helped establish their statuses. Hereby, each military group in the desert became independent and declared themselves as kings. Additionally, they constantly fought among themselves. In the north, the countries that were originally there dissolved during the disaster. By relying on the underground shelters built during the Cold War, they took in a large number of survivors. Underground ecological systems with cities as their cores were rebuilt. After the nuclear disaster's smoke clouds dispersed, people gradually walked out of the shelters, rebuilt the cities, and returned to living above ground. Communications were also restored between cities. In order to stand against new challenges, old political powers and new influential forces formed a new union consisting of 3 main cities and innumerable supporting small satellite cities, the Freedom Federation. The 3 main cities in the Freedom Federation are Dragon City, Fey City, and the final destination of our journey this time, Sand City. Forbes, who was listening with rapt attention, couldn't he help but ask, "Boss, what are these new challenges you mentioned? You already know about the Wastelands Gang and the Machinery Holy Cult." After the Freedom Federation was formed, the military groups engaging in chaotic warfare in the desert sensed incoming danger, so they also followed suit and founded the Wastelands Gang. With their great increase in power, they sought even bigger profits. The Machinery Holy Cult is a mad concept a group of crazy scientists came up with when they were in the shelters. They believed that the outside world was no longer suitable for humans to live in, so they thought of various ways to modify their own bodies into machinery. Among them was a genius, Professor Zhao. He succeeded in changing every part of his body, with the exception of his brain, into machinery. He also discovered that the brain could create an unending stream of bioenergy when in a dreaming state. Subsequently, Professor Zhao was exiled from the shelter because he had carried out inhumane modification experiments on other people against their will during his research. After that, he spread his ideologies via wireless communications and received acknowledgement from a lot of people. He gradually built a force of his own in the Gobi, and that is the Machinery Holy Cult. Lin Ke paused for a moment before he continued and said, "There are a lot of other extremist ideologies like this, too. One example is the mutants of Brothers Union who profess to be neo-humans and are out to kill all ordinary humans. The Crucifix Army believes that God caused the Day of Reckoning to punish humans. They also believe technology would lead to the destruction of the world. They revere the ancient times and abide by traditional customs. Then there is the Mysterious Academy, which produces and studies mutants. There are also several mysterious creatures that we used to think existed only in fantasies." 1. Forbes's mouth had already become so gaping wide that one could stuff a fist inside. After hearing all these horrifying stories, he held his boss in even higher esteem. Boss is really impressive. He knows everything, and everything he says is so clear and logical. Sand Condor, who had swum along the underground river and slipped to the front in advance, let out a cry with its husky voice. The sound traveled through the tunnel to Lin Ke. They had reached Sand City. Sand Condor swam along the underground river and caught sight of the end. There was a tightly shut metal door there. 2 minutes later, Lin Ke and Forbes also reached the metal door. The metal door was spotted with rust and featured a spinning wheel which was as large as a bicycle handle in the center. The groundwater branched out from here and flowed out through the big hole on the wall outside. From the gurgling, it sounded like the water was converging at some unknown place. Lin Ke turned back and glanced at Forbes. Then, he suddenly said, "Take off your trousers." 2s. Chapter 22, Entering Sand City. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Take off my trousers? Here. Forbes looked stupefied and rather caught off guard. S A slash 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 slash. His horrified expression gradually warped into one of shyness. As expected, boss has decided to make a move on a fresh, delicate flower like me in the end. Forbes bashfully reached under his flax clothing and slowly removed his trousers. Lin Ke also reached under his clothes and began taking off his trousers quickly. In fact, his movements were so impatient that he wanted to rip the trousers off directly. Forbes's trousers slid past his knees. Then, he bent over and stuck his buttocks up in the air toward Lin Ke. He stood with his legs apart, and his big, fat and round head appeared between his legs. From an upside-down view, he saw that his boss had also taken off his own trousers. The two boys' eyes suddenly met. Lin Ke balled up the trousers he was holding and hurled it at Forbes's buttocks. He even used quite a bit of strength this time. Forbes, upon being hit, instantly lost his balance, and his whole body fell forward. Just what do you have inside your mind the whole day? What I meant was, take off the Wastelands gang trousers. Otherwise, the two of us will be taken as Wastelands gang spies the moment we enter the city and end up being raked to death by their gunfire. Lin Ke was rather exasperated. Why is this damn fatty's mind always so full of dirty thoughts? Forbes pathetically fell on the ground. When he heard Lin Ke's words, he laughed in embarrassment and replied, "Ahaha. So that's what you meant." After Forbes took off his trousers, he hurriedly got up from the ground and went closer to Lin Ke. "Little treasure, listen and check if anyone's outside." The currents at the area where the groundwater branched out were very fierce. Just from the sounds of water splashing downward, one could tell that they were not at a low altitude. It wasn't safe to send anyone to scout in a situation like this, no matter who. Treasure Hunter Rat jumped down from Lin Ke's shoulder and went up to the rusty metal door. It didn't lean against it directly. Instead, Treasure Hunter Rat stretched out its little paws and tore off the mottled rust on the metal door right in front of it. Only then did it press its ear against the door and listen. Haha, this little guy is pretty particular about hygiene. Treasure Hunter Rat listened for a while. Then, it turned around and squeaked excitedly to convey that there wasn't any sign of human activity outside. However, it did vaguely hear its own kind, though. Lin Ke's eyes brightened. There aren't any humans outside, but there are rats around. Additionally, there is also a river channel at the side. In that case, the outside should either be the bottom of a bridge or a sewer. Sand Condor sprawled out on its back, laying at the side to air dry its wings. Treasure Hunter Rat also stayed far away from the metal door. Lin Ke put on gloves and forcefully twisted the round wheel with both hands. He did everything he could, but the round wheel didn't even budge. Lin Ke's power was only 3 points at the moment, so his strength wasn't even up to an ordinary human standard. "Forbes, come here and give it a go." Lin Ke didn't find this shameful, though. What was he to do when he had inherited a body like this the moment he transmigrated here? Shrugs. Forbes spat on his palms a couple of times, rubbed them together, and then forcefully turned the wheel with both hands. The rust patches on the round spinning wheel started to break and flip outward, and they clattered as they landed on the ground. At the same time, an ear-piercing screech caused by friction also rang out. The wheel had actually turned. The speed at which Forbes turned the wheel became faster and faster. Soon, the thick and heavy metal door emitted a deafening gong, and the spinning wheel became tightly stuck. "Stand back, Forbes. I'll open the door." Although Treasure Hunter Rat hadn't heard anyone outside, Lin Ke held the Glock 17 pistol in his hand nevertheless, just in case. With the pistol held up with one hand, Lin Ke pushed open the metal door with his other hand. The metal door, which had been abandoned for dozens of years, was incredibly heavy, and it even emitted an ear-piercing screech when it was being pushed open. After he pushed the door open, Lin Ke immediately saw a wide, fast-flowing river of black water, as well as a semicircle-shaped, domed roof above him. Right on the heels of it, a terrible stench assaulted their senses, choking Lin Ke and Forbes badly. All right, Lin Ke knew what this place was now. This was Sand City's trunk sewer. Lin Ke and Forbes held their hands over their noses and walked out. They closed the metal door behind them and headed in the direction against the water flow after taking a look at the water flow direction. The wastewater was directly transported out of the city, so they would be able to enter the city if they went against the flow. Sand Condor simply couldn't stand the stench. It spread its wings and flew in the direction against the sewer's water flow. Treasure Hunter Rat continued to follow Lin Ke. Forbes, watch your step. If you're careless and end up falling, the wastewater will directly wash you out of the city. Even I won't be able to save you. Upon hearing his words, Forbes huddled toward the wall at once. The paths on either side of the sewer were very narrow, they were only about 1 meter wide. Before long, Treasure Hunter Rat met a few fellow rats which were pitch black from head to toe. Treasure Hunter Rat excitedly jumped onto the floor to greet them. Lin Ke looked down at them. Treasure Hunter Rat was amicably chatting with its fellow rats from the city. However, one could evidently see that Treasure Hunter Rat, a rat from the countryside, was actually putting on more airs than the rats in the city sewer. Treasure Hunter Rat stood on its hind legs with its back straight, it even stood 1 fist's length away when speaking with the sewer rats, lest they dirted its fur. After a brief exchange, Lin Ke heard the chatter behind him becoming more and more intense. It didn't take long before Treasure Hunter Rat returned and jumped back onto Lin Ke. It sat on his shoulder with its paws against its hips, its cheeks all puffy as though they had been pumped with air. It started to speak unceasingly to Lin Ke about what had happened just now. After hearing what it said, Lin Ke burst into laughter. Simply put, those black rats only had one line to say: even a doghouse in Sand City's sewers is more impressive than your 10,000 hectares luxurious mansion in the ruins of a small, third-rate city. Treasure Hunter Rat had refuted a lot, but the black rats only had one line to say: I live in Sand City. No matter how eloquent Treasure Hunter Rat was, it simply went back to the same thing: I live in Sand City. In the end, Treasure Hunter Rat was so mad that it ran back. Haha, what's the point of fighting with them over this? When Howling Ancient Castle is rebuilt in the future, you'll be a royal rat. Your status will be so much higher than those plebeians. Lin Ke would like to say that this team was really very difficult to lead. He had a servant who constantly thought about taking off his trousers to do dirty deeds, a rat that required psychological counseling, and a lazy, silly performance artist. After almost half an hour of walking, they finally saw light at the end of the sewer. After one last bout of sprinting, dazzling white light filled Lin Ke's and Forbes's vision. The two of them finally exited the sewer. They went to the side to breathe in and out as much as they wanted. The dazzling light gradually vanished, and clarity returned to Lin Ke's eyes. Lin Ke looked around him, and the scenery in front of him looked very familiar. The black water surging from the river channel also began to look clearer. Lin Ke went up the stairs on the slope to an upwind area and took in the fairly fresh air there. What entered his sight was a huge dumping ground. Several people whose skin was as dark as Forbes's, but were skinny, frail, and physically deformed were there. They were going through heaps of rubbish to search for things of value and things worth recycling. This dumping ground was located in Sand City's slum area, which was also Sand City's southernmost borderland. This dumping ground is so big, dumbfounded by the sight, Forbes's mouth fell agape. Lin Ke's stomach was already growling softly. Since their escape from Goria Grand Canal, he hadn't ingested anything other than water. Although Lin Ke had already formed a complete and perfect plan, filling the stomach was clearly of higher priority than the plan. Forbes, we should go. Lin Ke didn't want to linger in the dumping ground. Firstly, Sand City was a very dangerous place. The slum area even had the charming name of Hell on Earth. The degree of disorder here far exceeded that of Strong Wind's desert and the Gobi. There was a story in Sand City's slum area that went like this: you could be sitting in a petty bourgeoisie cafe in the wealthy district drinking a cappuccino in the morning, but you might be stuffed into a burlap sack and transported to the slums in the afternoon. By the time you're out of the burlap sack at night, you'll find that you've already been transported to Machinery City and become part of the living battery army. Here, human trafficking, organ trafficking, contract killing, and arms trafficking happened everywhere. Although Sand City was under the Freedom Federation's jurisdiction and had hostile relations with the Machinery Holy Cult, the concepts of right and wrong and good and evil were already long gone in a place like the slum area. The only truth here was money. As long as one could pay, there was nothing that couldn't be done. Lin Ke did have cash on him. He had found 3,400 Wastelands coins on the Machinery Holy Cult fanatics. If they were a little more thrifty, this amount of money was more than enough to last them a month in terms of food, accommodation, and transport. The whole way, a wide-eyed Forbes let out sigh after sigh of admiration. The further they traveled, the more regulated the dumping ground looked. All the rubbish in the innermost area had already gone through filtering. Only children of the slums would stay here the whole day to pick up leftovers to exchange them for a few coins to help out with family expenses. The real rubbish was in the dumping ground's middle section. Various huge rubbish transporting trucks and excavators were at the top of the rubbish heaps. Rotten and putrid rubbish, combined with diesel exhaust fumes, stung one's nostrils and made one tear up badly. Lin Ke and Forbes were dressed like refugees. Coupled with Forbes's dark skin, they blended into the dumping ground perfectly. Nothing about them was out of place at all as they walked out of the dumping ground. What followed right after was an expanse of tiny, closed-off slum housing spaces. When looking out from the top, the place looked just like it had been pieced together with fabric patches of various colors. "We'll make do for lunch at noon, and then we'll have a feast at night." Forbes naturally didn't have any objections and nodded repeatedly. Just being here at Sand City already made him very happy. He had seen so many people, there were even so many people who looked like him here. Forbes finally understood his father's feelings of anticipation from back then. There would definitely have been a market for pallbearer services if they had come to Sand City and started their business here. Lin Ke spent 5 coins and bought 5 sandwiches at a small stall in the slums. He ate 1.5 sandwiches, Forbes ate 2, Treasure Hunter Rat ate half a sandwich, and he fed Sand Condor the last. Don't ask why Sand Condor didn't eat it by itself. Lazy fellow. After wolfing them down, Lin Ke thumped his chest a few times. He had choked a little. The next thing they had to do was look for a place to put up it. Lin Ke didn't plan on staying in the slums for long. It was simply too chaotic here. Accidents could happen anytime. It would distract their attention and waste their energy too easily. However, the slums were the only place he could stay in for these couple of days because he wanted to offload some goods. After walking out of the slums, the 2-storied and 3-storied short buildings in front finally felt a little more city-like. However, the blackish dirt roads filled with holes and dents, occasional cesspits at the roadside, and blackish, old, run-down building wall exteriors showed that this place was more like the fringe area linking the city and the countryside instead. Lin Ke found an inn at the street corner, its signboard almost falling off, and opened the old and shabby wooden door with an open sign hanging on it. He passed through the dim, long, narrow, and suffocating corridor and walked over to the inn's front desk. A black, middle-aged woman with a distinctive head of curly hair was currently bent over and knitting a sweater. "I'd like a standard room." The black, middle-aged woman didn't even raise her head. 50 coins a night. "I'll book it for 3 nights for now." Lin Ke paid without hesitation. The woman took out a room card and keys from a drawer and counted the money. With a hoarse voice, she mechanically said, "There's a pantry area at the end of the corridor on every floor. There are only burgers, sandwiches, and soda for food service. 5 coins for 1 set. If you need to order, you can just call the front desk." Lin Ke brought Forbes upstairs without waiting for her to finish. They had more important things to do after a quick rest. 3S. Chapter 23, Underground Black Market. Translator, Atlas Studios editor, Atlas Studios. The rooms in the tiny inn were extremely non-soundproof. When they went down the corridor, they could even hear a woman's loud, high-pitched, fake, and coy voice coming from beyond one room's door. In the corridor, they could hear people arguing, women's fake and pretentious sounds of stimulation, and men's low shouts when charging in position. Lin Ke could only say, "What a mess! What a huge mess!" The whole corridor was more like an orchestra of the various vicissitudes of life. Beyond the wooden doors, one could hear the joys, sorrows, partings, and reunions taking place within. Lin Ke walked over to room 505, the number indicated on the room card. The room's door plate was missing a nail and hung askew on the door. Lin Ke reached out and swiped it with his index finger. With the nail as the center, the door plate spun madly. What? A room where even the door plate is askew. Lin Ke opened the door with the key. A strong, humid smell of mold drifted out from within. Lin Ke covered his nose and walked into the room. Right away, he pulled the old, shabby curtains away and opened the windows to air the room. When Sand Condor, who was circling in the sky, saw the windows being opened, it swooped down onto the windowsill and dove into the room. Forbes closed the door, hung the backpack onto the clothes rack, and plopped his butt onto the bed. Treasure Hunter Rat also jumped down from Lin Ke's shoulder and landed on the bed. The next second, its tiny little body was bounced back up. Lin Ke stood at the window and played with Sand Condor. However, his gaze had already drifted into the distance as he thought about his plans and what he should do next. "Boss, what are our plans after this? Are we going to stay here the whole time?" asked Forbes. Before this, his heart had been filled with conviction in coming to Sand City. However, Forbes suddenly felt like he had lost his goal and conviction now that he had arrived. Lin Ke turned back and gave Forbes a deep, meaningful look. "Have a good sleep for now. I have a mission for you at night." "A mission? Tell me about it, boss." "I'm afraid that you'll be scared if I tell you now, so I'll wait until night falls to tell you instead." "How can that be? I won't even bat an eyelid for boss's sake, even if I have to go through hell and back. What won't I dare to do?" Forbes got up with a righteous aura all around him, his face filled with unswerving determination. At night, neon lights and various forms of light pollution sources in the slums lit up after the sun had set. A cyberpunk atmosphere suddenly came over the whole city. "Boss, will I really not die? I'm suddenly very scared," Forbes whimpered as Lin Ke pushed him out the door. Lin Ke patted Forbes on the shoulder. He guided him patiently and replied, "Don't worry. Just go there and sell the microchips normally. For the price. You can just follow the price I told you. I'll protect you from the shadows." With pleading eyes, Forbes said, "But I'm not talking about selling the microchips, boss. What I want to say is, can you not put army ants on me?" With regard to Forbes's request, the understanding Lin Ke naturally rejected him. "The place I'm currently taking you to is the underground black market. More than half of the prohibited goods in Sand City are transacted here. As long as you have the money, you can buy practically anything here. When you reach the destination later, act according to what I've told you earlier. The shopkeepers will definitely accept this price. After you receive the money, don't look back and come back immediately. You hear me?" Forbes nodded repeatedly. He repeatedly went over Lin Ke's earlier instructions in his mind. There were still crowds of people going about in the slums at night. After a day of labor, everyone went into the streets to enjoy a brief period of happiness in the evening. The lights on both sides of the main street lit up the streets brightly. There were passers-by and peddlers at the roadside, while all sorts of neon lights were inside the alleys. There were barmaids skimpily dressed soliciting customers, as well as top-naked women in the sex trade leaning out of old, run-down buildings' windows. They didn't feel the slightest bit of shame about their nakedness. They lit up cigarettes, constantly flirting and posing coquettishly at the crowds passing by below. However, these sites existed only on the main street. In some tiny winding paths where light couldn't reach, various activities not fit to be seen were taking place. In fact, during this period when Lin Ke and Forbes were walking, they had already heard no less than 4 or 5 gunshots. When Forbes, who was already very nervous from the start, heard the gunshots, he was so frightened that his fats trembled wildly. However, when he looked at Lin Ke and the passers-by around him, no changes occurred to their facial expressions at all. They were completely unaffected. Forbes couldn't help but ask, "Boss, why are all of you so unaffected when you hear the gunshots?" Your reaction was like that, and so were the reactions of the passers-by in the streets. Lin Ke thought for a moment and replied, "In the slave camp, would you stop doing your chores to go out and watch if someone is being whipped?" The fat on Forbes's cheeks quivered as he shook his head to express his negative response. "Why wouldn't you?" "Because slaves are whipped every day." "What's so interesting to watch about that?" replied Forbes naturally. "Then, do you understand why no one is surprised at gunshots now?" Forbes nodded thoughtfully, seemingly having understood the mindsets of these passers-by. However, Forbes' heart stopped beating for a moment the very next second, and he became somewhat panicked. "If there are a lot of gunfights here, then wouldn't the probability of me being shot to death also increase?" "Boss, in that case, do we also run the risk of being shot if we stay here in the slums?" Lin Ke cast a glance at Forbes, and meaningfully replied, "If you don't wish to be shot, I have 2 solutions for you." Forbes's eyes brightened, and he thought to himself, "Boss is still the impressive one, after all. He has come up with 2 solutions right away." Forbes waited patiently and obediently for the explanation. "The first is to kill all the bad guys. This way, no one will point a gun at you anymore. The second solution is to become one of them and become the most powerful person here so that they won't dare to point a gun at you." "Great. Saying that is no different from not saying anything at all." Forbes deflated like a balloon immediately. However, this wasn't a joke to Lin Ke. He had already made his choice. During their conversation, Lin Ke and Forbes had already entered the depths of the slums. Their purpose in coming out tonight was to offload goods. From the desert ancient ruins all the way to Weeping Valley, Lin Ke had looted a lot of things from the mercenaries and the machinery holy cult fanatics. He didn't intend to sell the consumables like guns, ammo, and medical supplies. They also wouldn't fetch much. However, the machinery holy cult's basic microchips were in high demand in the underground black market. If Lin Ke sold all 5 of them, they would bring him a hefty sum. He could also earn a bit of extra income along the way so that it would be more convenient when he executed his upcoming plans. "Boss, are we arriving soon?" Forbes was already nervous from the start. He felt even more jittery upon seeing that they hadn't reached their destination even after walking for half a day. "Relax, we'll be there very soon." After they passed the bustling main street, Lin Ke saw an old, broken-down signboard with Dark Shadow Alley written on it at the roadside. They had reached their destination. Lin Ke brought Forbes with him and entered the Mafia's alley. The trash cans in the alley were filled with rubbish. Foul water dripped onto the floor at the edges, and annoying flies buzzed as they flew about the top. The alley was dark, there weren't any lights there. Forbes was somewhat fearful as he timidly followed after Lin Ke. The scene looked rather strange. Lin Ke was small and skinny, but his gait was steady and even. Whereas Forbes, who was big and tall, had a timid look all over his face and cowered as he walked at the back. Dark Shadow Alley was the entrance to Sand City's underground black market. The portion of the alley closer to the outside was devoid of human presence. Neither could they hear any noise there. However, their field of vision suddenly broadened when they turned the corner. A small, empty plaza sat amid the residential buildings. Along the walls were the homeless that leaned against the walls, their hair messy and all over the place as they puffed away on cigarette butts that they had picked up from the floor. Lin Ke kept his eyes focused in front of him and walked straight toward a vending machine with blinking neon lights. Forbes was actually looking left and right around him curiously. When he made eye contact with a homeless man's dark, dreary eyes, he was so frightened that he shrank back at once. These people look so creepy. Boss, are you intending to buy a drink? I have clean water in my bag. Lin Ke fished out a $10 coin, which he had exchanged in advance from his pocket, and tossed it into the lunch box of a homeless man lying beside the vending machine. The coin landed in the metal lunch box and emitted clinks and clanks as it clattered. The homeless man didn't say a single word, but he stretched out his arm and knocked against the black brick wall next to his hand. 2 seconds later, a door opened from the vending machine. A lackey with a mohawk and tattoos all over his body scrutinized Lin Ke and Forbes. He frowned slightly when he saw the flax clothing that the duo wore. Lin Ke kept a straight face, and calmly said, "Offloading stuff." The lackey glanced left and right. Then, he stretched out an arm and waved the two of them in. They entered a dimly lit corridor. It was then closely followed by deafening electronic dance music and blinding laser lights. Lin Ke leaned over to Forbes and said, "Follow me closely and don't get lost." Green, purple, red, and blue laser lights flickered and swayed madly, outlining the sensual and revealing figures on the dance floor. Although it was incredibly dark, Forbes still managed to catch sight of several heart-racing and blush-worthy scenes. On the platform in the middle of the dance floor, only palm-sized fabric scraps covered the key areas on the bodies of the women there. In Forbes's opinion, the fabric scraps wouldn't be enough to make a piece of clothing for treasure hunter Rat, even if all of those fabric scraps were pieced together. What made it even worse was that their key areas would become exposed if their movements were even just a bit bigger as they danced. When matched with the dim laser lights, their key areas appeared, disappeared, and reappeared, giving off an unusual kind of thrill. Who's going to be able to withstand this? Forbes was just a pure-hearted little fatty from the desert countryside. When had he ever seen a scene like this? He hastily lowered his head and followed closely after Lin Ke, his cheeks flushed red and his throat dry. The lackey brought them to a secret door. Then, he opened it and signaled to the duo to go in. From the beginning till the end, Lin Ke didn't have much of an expression on his face. On the other hand, Forbes looked like a country bumpkin entering a city for the first time, finding everything new and novel. Bam! As the secret door closed behind them, the noisy, deafening music finally disappeared. Those scenes that made one's temperature rise also vanished along with it. Forbes let out a long breath. The test of temptation was finally over. All right, this is the underground black market. Lin Ke crossed his arms in front of his chest. It was time for Forbes to perform now. If they were in luck, they would be able to earn a pretty sum today. Forbes looked at the long flight of stairs which led downward in front of him, a look of stupefaction all over his face. The scene in front of him was somewhat different from the underground black market that he had imagined. "Boss, this is the underground black market? Why isn't there anyone here? We haven't reached the area where the people are yet. This is Sand City's subway operation line, as well as an underground shelter. This place was already abandoned before humans returned to living above ground. Later on, it was turned into an underground black market by the forces occupying this place. Large transactions take place here every night. There are 2 sets of rules in Sand City. One of them is the rules for daytime, and the other is the rules for nighttime." Lin Ke spread his arms and motioned at the abandoned subway line in front of them. "This is the origin of the night's rules, the underground black market." Lin Ke looked back and glanced at Forbes before saying, "You can change your clothes now. Do you remember the steps I taught you earlier?" Forbes nodded repeatedly and repeated the instructions. "Maintain a distance of 20 meters from boss. When boss stops walking, look for a small stall named Dave's Watches. Bring out the basic microchips after that and sell them at a fixed price of 11,000 coins. During this period, no matter what questions the other party asks, do not answer. Leave immediately after receiving the money." Lin Ke snapped his fingers. "That's right. Change and get to work." Forbes handed the backpack over to Lin Ke. He then took off his flax clothing, revealing a fitting white shirt, straight-cut black suit trousers, and shiny black leather shoes underneath. Put on the sunglasses as well. Forbes took out the sunglasses and propped them onto his nose bridge. He then put on a black vest and buttoned it, instantly transforming into a businessman. As he touched the basic microchips in his shirt pocket, Forbes took a deep breath. 2S. Chapter 24, Dog Eat Dog. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Lin Ke had specially invested a large sum of money to tailor-make these clothes for Forbes. Should both of them go in wearing the same simple, worn-out flax clothing, people would be able to tell that they were partners with just a glance. Forbes had previously mentioned his family business of being pallbearers to him, so Lin Ke had procured this set of clothes for Forbes. Now, treat this place like where you carry coffins and conduct rites as you wear your favorite battle robes. This way, you won't be nervous anymore. Forbes took a deep breath. He had only just mustered up his courage when he deflated and looked back at Lin Ke. He pleaded, "Boss, I won't be nervous at all if you can take the army ants off me. If you still don't cut the crap, the army ants inside the metal box are going to wake up." Lin Ke glanced at Forbes's shirt pocket. Very soon, a concentrated string of vibrations caused by metal bits swaying and colliding was produced from the interior of the metal box. Forbes's countenance changed drastically at once, and his scalp turned numb and tingly. A chill surged out from his spine, and he shivered. The metal box returned to silence. Lin Ke went down the stairs as though he had done it countless times before. Forbes watched him closely. When he estimated that they were roughly 20 meters apart, he stepped forward in his brand new, shiny, black leather shoes and hastily followed after him. Clip-clop, clip-clop. Footsteps echoed in the empty, spacious subway station. After they entered the subway station, they could vaguely see a few people leaning against the walls in a distant area of the corridor. Apart from all sorts of products which hung on wire mesh grills on the walls, there were also stalls with goods spread out on the floor. The deeper they went, the more packed together the stalls became, especially as they continued down the passageway. Soon, they reached the underground shelter connected to the subway station. The moment they descended the stairs, loud, vivacious sounds of discussion spilled out from inside. The space inside the shelter was very big. The commercial stalls in the middle were like the slum's wide expanses of partitioned spaces that connected with each other. Several individual storefronts and small stalls also surrounded them. On various signboards were the most shocking contents, written in the most dramatic and exaggerated fonts. When matched with extreme colors, they were extraordinarily expressive. In particular, when hundreds close to 1,000 signboards were crowded together, the sight bedazzled people's eyes. A large cubic screen also hung at the domed roof above the shelter. Several promotional ads played in real time on all four screens, and it looked just like the large screens at the top of basketball courts. Lin Ke strolled leisurely in front. He occasionally stopped to take a look at products in the stalls, also glancing at the slightly nervous Forbes behind him with his peripheral vision. A mix of crooks and honest folks was in the shelter. Sloppy and slovenly ruffians, wicked and savage criminals, people from upper-class society dressed in tuxedos, trouble-making rebel force insurgents, and Sand City's defense troops, all of them were actually able to stay in the same room harmoniously without whipping out their guns and pointing them at each other. This was the might of the underground emperor. The moment anyone created trouble and fired their guns here, they would be blacklisted for life and lose their right to enter the underground black market. In Sand City, several things were prohibited on the surface and could only be purchased in the underground black market. Should one lose their right to enter the black market, it would be no different from cutting off their own limbs. At the same time, the underground black market was also a platform for money laundering, stolen goods disposal, dealings, and information circulation. Its smooth and steady operations played to the benefit of many forces. Lin Ke walked all the way to his destination. He went past Dave's watches and stopped at a nearby military firearms stall. When Forbes came forward in a simple-minded and naive manner, he noticed Lin Ke, who had stopped at a stall. Then, he looked around and found the place Lin Ke had told him about Dave's watches. Dave's Watches was a mobile food truck-style storefront with a signboard. Various styles of watches were displayed on the shelves in the food truck, including old analog watches and outlandish-looking digital watches. Inside the stall was someone's head. He wore a pair of mechanical goggles with variable optical magnification on his head and was currently bent over and fiddling with something with the tools in his hands. Forbes took a deep breath, walked up to him, and said, "I'm here to sell something." The guy's head looked up abruptly. Under the optical zoom goggles effect, his eyes were magnified by several times their original size and looked ferocious and terrifying at first glance. Dave impatiently replied, "What is it? Hurry and take it out." Forbes was surprised this wasn't what he had imagined. "I'm here to sell something. Shouldn't he be talking nicely and politely to me? Why is he so fierce and harsh?" However, Forbes didn't waste any time on details like this for the sake of completing the mission Lin Ke had given him as soon as possible. Forbes fished out one of the basic microchips in his pocket and placed it in front of Dave. In Dave's mind, a fledgling like Forbes couldn't possibly have anything great to offer, but he was completely stunned when he lifted his head. "Hey, how can you hold something like that with your bare hands?" Dave felt as if a knife was twisting about in his heart when he saw how Forbes held the basic microchip in his hands directly. Dave hurriedly dug out a clean handkerchief and carefully took the microchip from Forbes. Even his facial muscles were twitching as he did so. "This damn fatty is practically wasting God's gifts to humans." Dave's optical zoom mechanical goggles zoomed in and out as he scrutinized the microchip carefully. He was so excited that he was trembling. "This is the Scout Module microchip from the Machinery Holy Cult's Individual Range Joint Combat Type 1 processing chipset, and it's in undamaged and intact condition. Where did you get this from?" Machinery Holy Cult's fanatical followers usually only appeared in the desolate Gobbis depths. It was indeed rare for someone to get their hands on a microchip in such good condition. Only bounty hunters out on missions would have the opportunity to go deep into barren lands like the desolate Gobi and get their hands on these things from the Machinery Holy Cult. Even so, one only came across basic microchips in such great condition less than a few times a year. Forbes didn't bother with what Dave said. His mind was filled only with the lines Lin Ke had taught him. "My asking price is $11,000. Dave lowered his head and considered it for a moment. Then, he gritted his teeth and answered, "Deal." The market value of basic microchips usually ranged from $8,000 to $10,000, but those in good condition could fetch a maximum of $12,000. Although the little fatty looked simple-minded and naive, he was clear on the market rate. He also didn't say any superfluous rubbish. It was evident that he had an expert guiding him. Dave didn't bother with any superfluous talk, either. He took out a brand new stack of cash amounting to $10,000 from the safe and separately counted another $1,000. Then, he passed them through a bill counter in front of Forbes. "Take a good look. Here's $11,000. Cash and goods are to be exchanged simultaneously." When Forbes took the money, his eyes swept left and right, and he just so happened to see Lin Ke's figure leaving in advance. He hurriedly stuffed the money into his shirt's inner pocket, causing his chest area to bulge. Forbes felt like he was in the clouds at the moment. He had never seen this much money in his whole life. Nor had he ever thought that a microchip not much bigger than a fingernail could actually sell for this much. The shopkeeper didn't even bargain with him. Dave pressed his hands against his workstation and leaned forward toward Forbes. "You also have other basic microchips on you, right? State a suitable price." "I want them all." Machinery Holy Cult fanatics usually operated in teams of 5, every microchip had its own particular function. It was highly likely that this fat guy in front of him had wiped out a whole team and obtained the other microchips, since he was able to get his hands on a Scout Module basic microchip. Forbes shook his head madly. I don't have any more. I only have this one microchip. After speaking, he turned around and left quickly. Dave watched as Forbes left. Then, he stuck his head out of the food truck's window and looked around, but he didn't discover any suspicious-looking people. After that, he broke into a grin and began to study the basic microchip, immersed in his joy. Forbes followed the instructions he had been given previously, left the shelter, and returned to the subway station. Next to the secret door at the subway station was a mechanical elevator with a manual scissor gate. This was the entryway to the underground black market. Forbes entered the elevator impatiently. He wanted to leave and share his joy of sudden wealth with Lin Ke as soon as he could. He was just about to shut the gate and go up when three people suddenly appeared, stretched out their arms, and held the elevator's gate. The three of them wore black leather tops and skin-tight trousers. Each of their hairstyles was more outlandish and wilder than the others. Their appearances were exactly a "why don't you understand me" kind of non-mainstream image. Tattoos, lip piercings, gold teeth, all the elements were there. Forbes hastily hid in a corner of the elevator like a harmless hamster. The three men glanced at Forbes before they turned around, chewing on gum as they waited for the elevator to go up. Forbes's heart settled slightly. It was fine as long as they weren't looking for trouble with him. The creaks from the old, worn-out mechanical elevator could be clearly heard. As it traveled upward, the elevator constantly shook, giving the illusion that it might fall anytime. A brief moment later, the elevator's indicator light turned from red to green. Forbes finally heaved a sigh of relief. The three non-mainstream men exited the elevator first, while Forbes followed closely behind. However, Forbes was stunned the moment he walked out because he didn't see Lin Ke waiting for him outside. In the alley, there was only a dim lamp at the elevator entrance. All the other areas were shrouded in darkness. In addition, this alley evidently wasn't the same path that he had taken when he came here. Forbes was at a loss for a while, but he could only brace himself and walk to the alley's outside anyway. He had only taken a couple of steps when he heard a series of mocking laughs behind him. "Little brother, aren't you going to bring your big brothers here to become rich with you when you have money-making connections?" The moment those words reached his ears, Forbes's heart immediately sank to the very bottom. He subconsciously held his hands over his chest. As it turned out, the three of them had already set their eyes on Forbes a long time ago in the underground black market. They saw Forbes stuffing a thick wad of cash into his pocket at Dave's watches with their own eyes. The underground black market prohibited people from fighting inside the market, but the restriction no longer applied once they exited the elevator. Forbes was rather flustered. He saw the pistols the three men deliberately displayed at their waists. The threat in their actions was awfully strong. "I don't have any money on me. I don't have any money-making connections, either." "No money? Hee. An extremely nervous and terrified Forbes watched the few of them come forward. Suddenly, he turned and made a mad dash for the outside of the alley. He couldn't care about much else at the moment anymore. The only thought on his mind was that he couldn't let them take the money. Damn, he actually dared to run. The three men brandished their pistols. The crisp snap of guns being loaded resounded in the alley. Forbes's heart skipped a beat. He knew that the other party was about to fire. He hastily bent over and moved in an erratic, zigzag motion. As for whether he could evade the bullets or not, he had no confidence about that at all. Just as the three men were about to fire, they suddenly discovered that the triggers on their guns had disappeared. "Why did the triggers on our guns disappear? Without the triggers, how are we supposed to fire?" The three men were still perplexed when they discovered something even more horrifying. Under the elevator's dim, yellowish light, they saw a swarm of tiny silver insects moving about on their bodies, eating away at their clothes. "These are army ants." The three men's hair stood on end. They hastily discarded the guns in their hands and started to smack at the Silver Army ants on their bodies. At this exact moment, Lin Ke slowly walked out from the shadows at a wall corner like a phantom. He held up the Glock 17 pistol in his hand. Whiz, whiz, whiz. The gunshots sounded like soft whistling. There actually weren't any of the usual violent explosions. Blood spurted from the three men's foreheads one by one. By the time they noticed Lin Ke, they were already dead. You've killed a level 5 ruffian and gained 250 EXP x3. Forbes wasn't struck, and he even heard strange-sounding gunshots. He subconsciously turned and looked behind him. And suddenly stopped in his tracks. Boss! Delight filled Forbes's eyes, and he looked much like he had just been reunited with someone after many years of separation. Those that heard him would know that he was calling out for his boss, but those that didn't would have thought that he was calling out for his husband one upon seeing the excitement in his facial features. 3s. Chapter 25, It's impossible for him to work for others. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Lin Ke could hold out against an enemy's concentrated attacks, but he couldn't resist this loving, tender call from Forbes. Before Forbes could dash over and give him a hug brimming with love, Lin Ke stopped him in time. All the money is still with you, right? When Lin Ke mentioned the money, Forbes immediately came to a stop and fished out the stack of bills from his suit. Lin Ke squatted down and started to look for war spoils together with treasure hunter Rat. You've obtained 3 P21 pistols, damaged, 4,300 Wastelands coins, and 3 Jack Gang signet rings. By the time Lin Ke had finished searching the bodies, an out-of-breath Forbes had also run over to him. Seemingly having forgotten the dangerous situation he had been in just a moment ago, Forbes excitedly asked, "Boss, how come you're here? I didn't see you when I came out just now, so I thought you had already left." Lin Ke, who was squatting on the floor, pointed at the 3 corpses and asked, "Why didn't you give them the money when they wanted to rob you just now?" With a serious expression, Forbes replied, "Boss risked his life to get this money. How can I hand it over to others? Aren't you afraid that they'll shoot and kill you?" When he thought of the scene just now, fear still lingered in Forbes. He replied, "I am. Why wouldn't I be? I'm afraid of dying the most. But this money belongs to boss, so I can't just give it to them. That's for the best. We'll come here again tomorrow." Forbes panicked immediately. "Hey? We are coming back again." Lin Ke raised his head and waved the money he had just obtained from ransacking the thugs' bodies. "How are we going to earn money if we don't come here? If we don't earn money, how will we buy you new clothes and eat lots of food? Look at this, we've earned $4,300 so easily. It's not that much less than selling microchips, right?" Forbes was stunned. It seemed like, that did indeed make a lot of sense. Forbes only reacted after quite a while, and he asked, "Boss, did you already know that people would set their sights on me?" Lin Ke had a "isn't that obvious" look in his eyes. Anyone would be tempted, considering how Forbes had "I'm a newbie. This is my first time here. I have treasures on me. I'm carrying a huge sum of money on me," written clearly all over his face. Although $10,000 was a huge sum of money to Forbes, this amount of money was practically insignificant to the veterans who struck deals in the underground black market every day. They would never make a big fuss over this bit of money. Only ruffians and random thugs from small gangs would fail to keep their greed in check and follow Forbes when they noticed a docile little lamb like him. Forbes was Lin Ke's bait, and he was precisely fishing for these people with insatiable greed. Lin Ke had come out in advance and set up the Silver Army ants in the shadows at the entryway. Forbes had a small box of Silver Army ants on him, so Lin Ke was able to detect his precise location. After the enemies came out of the elevator, the Silver Army ants had taken the opportunity to climb onto them secretly while they had their full attention on Forbes. With its unique metal detection ability, Treasure Hunter Rat would know exactly what metallic objects the thugs had on them just by scrunching up its little nose and taking a quick sniff. Lin Ke had made use of this and telepathically informed the Silver Army ants of the firearms locations so that they could bite off the pistol triggers without anyone realizing it. Lin Ke rubbed the Jack Gang signet rings in his hand, and hints of a smile involuntarily appeared on the corners of his lips. The victims today were from Jack Gang. Who will the victims be tomorrow? Lin Ke had never been fond of violence. A classy, leisurely sport that could regulate one's temperament and cultivate one's disposition such as fishing couldn't be any more suitable for him. After all, it was impossible for him to work for others, not even in his entire life. After stowing away their war spoils, Lin Ke and Forbes exited the little alley. "Boss, why did your gunshots today sound kinda different? It sounds like they are a lot softer than before." Lin Ke fished out the Glock 17 pistol. Attached to the muzzle was a long, black, and thick silencer. "I wasn't just leading the way for you today. I also wanted to go there to replenish my ammunition and refresh my equipment." Now that they were in Sand City, he couldn't fire without any reservations any longer as he had done in the wild. Thus, Lin Ke picked up silencers for the Glock 17 pistol and the tactical machine pistol while buying 159mm bullets along the way. Lin Ke did a count on the way back. He currently had 17,500 plus Wastelands coins. "I have 4 basic microchips left, and I should be able to sell them for about $50,000. The value of 300 grams of gold is approximately $60,000. I can also reel in quite a few fishes, so that's another $20,000 odd." Lin Ke silently did a quick count. "It seems like I'm still about $50,000 short of $200,000. The main reasons behind Lin Ke saving up $200,000 were to improve his combat prowess as soon as possible and to pick up a main class. Before he had transmigrated, Lin Ke had Fighter as his main class and Vampire as his subclass. Fighter's high HP and Vampire's unique recovery abilities had allowed him to fight and farm monsters in the wild for long periods of time without the need for healing. However, Lin Ke now had the Zerg's Nest, obtained the Wastelands planet's hidden main scenario mission, and had also been reborn while carrying 6 years of gaming experience with him. In terms of one's degree of familiarity with the game, nobody would dare claim the top spot if Lin Ke claimed the second spot. Martial arts, supernatural ability, mechanical, and mystery. Each of the 4 power systems had their own strengths. However, there was actually one more hidden system apart from the 4 power systems that were officially announced universal type. One could tell just from the name alone that there was a huge difference between universal type and the other 4 above-mentioned systems. The 4 normal systems were distinguished by their type of powers, and every type of power branched out into quite a few different classes. However, there was only one class under the universal type Scholar. Scholars were extremely special because they could disregard the power system when learning skills. In other words, they could learn skills from any class. One shouldn't be misled by how scholars seemed to be in a highly superior position, though. There was also one major flaw to this particular class: the amount of EXP consumed when learning a skill was double the original. Perhaps it wouldn't seem like much in the beginning, but the amount of EXP scholars needed was massive as the skills increased in level. As the saying went, better a little that is well done than a great deal imperfectly. One would usually bring out a class's maximum effects by focusing on and developing one system and pinpointing where they should branch out. Although a scholar could learn skills from multiple classes and held a diversification advantage in the early stages, they would need increasingly more EXP to continue raising the skills levels. This would eventually lead them to a situation where they owned a wide range of skills but specialized in none. They could do everything and nothing at the same time. Such was the awkward plight of scholars. However, none of this was a problem for Lin Ke. Was there anyone more familiar with mission flow and mission rewards than him? Everything that Lin Ke was doing now was for the sake of unlocking the universal type, which had harsh and demanding requirements. One of the prerequisites to unlocking the universal type was that all of one's attributes must reach 10 points before the player reached level 10. As everyone knew, ordinary players typically started out with 5 points each in 4 attributes: power, agility, endurance, and intelligence. Even if there were differences in the values, it didn't go beyond a 1-point difference. The values of the 3 other attributes, energy, charm, and luck, were completely random. The energy attribute represented one's ability to manage special powers. If a player wanted to take the supernatural ability type route or the mysterious type route, their energy attribute must be more than 5 points. The charm attribute influenced NPCs' attitudes towards players. It also influenced the outcome of some plot details and provided additive effects to reputation gain and friendliness meters. The luck attribute was related to critical hit rate and item drop rates. A player could gain a total of 30 latent capacity points when leveling up from level 1 to level 10. Even if one were lucky, all 4 of their non-random attributes had normal base values, and all 3 of their randomized attributes had 5 points each. One would require a total of 35 points if they wanted all 7 of their attributes to reach 10 points each. The purpose behind Lin Ke saving up $200,000 was precisely to resolve the problem of his weak body's low attributes in one go. It was also to meet the prerequisite for unlocking the universal type along the way. We currently have $17,590. We'll round off the figure and take the $90 as a celebration for successfully finishing our apprenticeship. In the slums, the spending power of $90 was still very impressive. It bought them 2 fried chickens, 4 hamburgers, and 1 large jug of beverage. After consuming all of it, there were 4 new dead bodies in room 505. Lin Ke, Forbes, Treasure Hunter Rat, and Sand Condor, all of them ate so much that each of their mouths was covered in grease. They laid still and motionless on the bed and the floor like dead bodies. After eating and drinking their fill, it was time to have a good rest. They would continue fishing the next day. Lin Ke didn't take off his clothes when he went to sleep. He kept the gun under his pillow. Sand Condor hung on the window and fell asleep after it ate its fill. In fact, it fell asleep even earlier than Lin Ke. From the looks of it, they couldn't count on it anymore. Thus, the task of keeping night watch was given to the army ants that didn't need to eat or drink. A night passed. As per usual, Treasure Hunter Rat woke Lin Ke up. However, Lin Ke was mildly surprised by the fact that Forbes didn't actually sleep in today. Forbes had even woken up earlier than Lin Ke. "Forbes, you have dark circles under your eyes. Did someone beat you up?" Forbes had a look of fatigue and even injustice on his face as he said, "Boss, I had initially already fallen asleep, but I heard a woman's screams of pain coming from the room next door in the middle of the night. I initially thought that the screams would go away after a while, but the screams next door only just stopped when screams began coming from the room opposite. Just like that, they continued to alternate. This went on for the whole night." Lin Ke was terribly amused the moment he heard what Forbes said. The cheaper and smaller an inn was, the more such things would happen. After all, the costs were low. After teasing Forbes, Lin Ke felt Treasure Hunter Rat pulling at his clothes. Lin Ke lowered his head to see Treasure Hunter Rat with both its paws resting against its hip, its head held high, and its chest puffed out as though it was waiting for his praise. Treasure Hunter Rat carelessly shrugged its left shoulder at its master, indicating that something was to its left. Lin Ke cast a glance at the stool beside the bed, and his eyes widened at once. There was clearly a ring made out of pure gold on the stool. Lin Ke finally reacted, and he asked, "Did you bring that here?" Treasure Hunter Rat puffed out its chest and lifted its head as though the red scarf at its chest had become even more vibrant. NOW1. It was at this moment that a furious roar rang out from the corridor. "Why has my gold ring gone missing?" 2s. Chapter 26, Phantom. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Lin Ke, who was holding the gold ring, seemed to know where this thing had come from now. Outside, the enraged voice echoed in the corridor, and Lin Ke kept the ring happily. He would just take this as compensation for Forbes's emotional distress the previous night. Well done. The meat you ate last night didn't go to waste. Treasure Hunter Rat's eyes narrowed into slits as it enjoyed Lin Ke stroking it. 2. To Lin Ke, this was really an unexpected surprise. Lin Ke had initially been wondering where he was supposed to earn the last few tens of thousands of wasteland coins so that he could have a total of $200,000. From the looks of it now, he didn't need to worry as long as he had Treasure Hunter Rat with him. Lin Ke got up from bed, washed up, and began to fret over the family's livelihood. Forbes, don't go out during the day. I'll leave Sand Condor and some of the army ants here in the inn to protect you. I'm going out to get something done. The moment Forbes heard that Lin Ke was going to abandon him and do something by himself, he thought of how he was all alone in Sand City and unfamiliar with the place and immediately panicked. Boss, bring me with you. I won't make any trouble at all. I'll strictly follow your instructions and firmly listen to your commands. Lin Ke patted Forbes on the shoulder and comforted him. It's not suitable for you to show yourself in public during the day. I still need you for fishing at night. The fishing method could only be utilized a maximum of 2 times. The moment they did it too often, people would take notice. Although quite a few dark-skinned fatties existed in Sand City's slums, there weren't that many who had Forbes's simple-minded and naive appearance. If they played the trick too often, people with ill intentions would easily set their sights on them. In such a situation, Lin Ke might be able to save his own skin, but it was hard to guarantee Forbes's safety. Lin Ke couldn't guarantee that he could stay by Forbes's side 24 hours a day, so he would stop after having just a slight taste of the benefits. At the very least, he had to prevent Forbes from becoming a target. Forbes became downcast and disappointed after hearing Lin Ke's explanation. Don't worry, just stay in the inn. I'll be back before noon. Lin Ke had 3 main objectives during this morning trip. The first was to create an identity, and the second was to open a bank account and get a bank card. The last was to offload the raw gold and the large gold ring. As the amount of cash on them increased, it became more and more inconvenient for Forbes and Lin Ke to go out. Thus, it was time to get a bank card. Freedom Federation's financial markets had integrated with one another, so bank cards issued in Sand City could be used anywhere within the Freedom Federation's borders. It was also fairly easy to get a bank card. When one had the money, getting a legal identity wasn't an issue. Although Sand City was part of the Freedom Federation, the whole place actually operated on Wasteland's rules. In this city with a population of 5 million, ultimate power and authority were still concentrated in the hands of just a few people. The whole city was like a cake. How much, or how little, profit one made wholly depended on how tough the knife cutting the cake was. After spending $500, Lin Ke had their legal identities settled. With an identity, it was convenient to get things done now. He bought a cell phone and obtained a bank card done in one go. Lin Ke wasn't the least bit worried about how safe the bank was. Although one could call the bank one of the Freedom Federation's financial institutions, in truth, it was just the materialization of the game's monetary system. It only existed to make the game look more realistic. 1. After doing all that, Lin Ke found somewhere to offload the 300 grams of raw gold, and the large gold ring Treasure Hunter Rat had found. The place bought each gram of gold at a rate of 207 Wastelands coins. Soon, Lin Ke saw an SMS notification on his cell phone. On April 17, 10:45 a.m., 66,240 Wastelands coins have been credited to your bank card ending with 2,234. You have a current balance of 81,240 Wastelands coins. It's a pleasure working with you, boss. I'll be back when I have things to offload again. Lin Ke left the goldsmith with a smile. His bank balance would pass the $100,000 milestone as long as their harvest tonight was a little better. As for clothes, it wasn't that Lin Ke didn't want to change them, but he just didn't want to waste any money. After returning and having lunch with Forbes at noon, Lin Ke laid on the bed and stared off into space. He was currently thinking about when he should go and meet Moros. If he hadn't received the A-level mission and didn't know the prince's story, Lin Ke would definitely have gone to look for Moros to complete the mission immediately after entering the city and settling down. However, Lin Ke had figured out the complete mission logic chain and understood the underlying plotline's hidden story after receiving the prince's mission Mandala's Revenge. Moros Mat was one of the Desert Prince's 7 servants. After conspiring with the others and jointly killing the prince, they had split the wealth and assets that originally belonged to the prince among themselves. After he arrived at Sand City, he transformed into a billionaire. Nearly 1/3 of the entire Sand City's properties were under his name. He held Sand City's economic lifeline in his hands. Water conservation, electric power, transportation. There was a saying that described Moros's influence, and it went as such: there are 2 things that one cannot avoid when living in Sand City: air, and Moros. 1. With just this, one would understand why a sea-level pursuit mission would occur right after one returned the pocket watch. When Moros saw the pocket watch, he must have thought of the events that had taken place in Howling Ancient Castle's tunnels 42 years ago. Thus, he sent professional killers to check out the player's background and investigate whether they had entered a deeper tunnel level and discovered the prince's remains. In his past life, Lin Ke had been totally unaware of this. Therefore, Moros had sent him a big gift as compensation after he completed the sea-level pursuit mission, and they closed the book on this matter. However, Lin Ke wasn't sure what would happen when he went to meet Moros again, since he now knew the inside story. Aside from Moros, one of the other culprits behind the Desert Prince's murder was also in Sand City: Jean Alonso. He was the battalion commander of Mandala's defense forces back then, current commander-in-chief of Sand City's defense troops, one of the 3 council members of the Freedom Federation, and Sand City's highest-ranking leader. To put this into one simple sentence, killing Jean Alonso was tantamount to becoming enemies with Sand City and the entire Freedom Federation. Between the 2 of them, one held military power, while the other held economic power. They practically had Sand City in their firm clutches. Lin Ke rubbed his temples. As expected of an A-level mission, indeed. There were only 2 of the Desert Prince's murderers in Sand City, 2. If Lin Ke added the remaining 5 to the mix, he would practically become enemies with the whole world. However, although that might be the case, it wasn't like there was no way to salvage the situation either. If he wanted to break out of the deadlock, a certain person would have to play a key role. After musing for half a day, Lin Ke's tightly knitted brows smoothed out slightly. The time for raising one's head and freely imagining the future was already over. What came next was to lower his head and look at the present. What Lin Ke needed to do now was to save up $200,000 as quickly as possible and unlock the universal type. It was only by doing this that he could implement his upcoming plans. When night fell, Lin Ke and Forbes entered the streets again. With experience from the day before, Forbes was a lot more relaxed today. It was just that he was still as loser-like as he had been the day before when he passed by the dance floor. After they entered the subway station, Lin Ke looked back and asked, "You still remember the flow of events, right?" Forbes nodded hastily and expressed that he was fine by himself. "All right, go by yourself today. I have something else that I need to do now. Remember to leave the black market at 9:30 p.m. If you're done before that, you can take a walk around the black market by yourself. You only need to keep in mind that nobody will dare to harm you as long as you don't go out of the elevator door." Lin Ke glanced at the clock display in the subway station. It was currently 9 p.m. sharp. "Oh right, remember that the price for the microchip is $13,000 today." Forbes nodded seriously and kept everything Lin Ke said in mind. After Forbes left, Lin Ke also began to move. He needed to offload his spoils. Aside from a bit of money, he had also gotten 3 guns from the 3 local ruffians the previous night. It was just a shame that the Silver Army ants had bitten off the triggers, so all 3 guns were now useless. He had to look for a professional gun assembly store to get rid of them. Lin Ke took the mechanical elevator punctually at 9:10 p.m. and left the underground black market. He clearly needed only 10 minutes, yet he had told Forbes that he needed half an hour. Lin Ke naturally had his own reasons for doing so. He blended into the shadows where light couldn't reach and leaned against the wall motionlessly. Treasure Hunter Rat and the Silver Army ants left Lin Ke and scattered into every corner of the back alley. Every little movement and action inside the alley was within his grasp. About 10 minutes later, a series of shuffling footsteps drifted over from outside the alley. "Hurry up, all of you! He's almost out!" Little Treasure stood guard beside the alley wall and openly reported everything it saw to Lin Ke. Squeak, squeak. In an alley at night, a rat's squeaks were so harmonious when mixed in with footsteps that the few people in a hurry didn't even find anything strange about it. It'd be stranger if there weren't any rats in a place like this. Lin Ke leaned against a corner of the wall. He held his breath and concentrated, mentally ordering the Silver Army ants to climb up the 4 people's bodies. The 4 of them had learned their lesson. They didn't keep their guns at their waists but held them in their hands instead. 3. The leader standing under the light whipped out his cell phone and dialed someone's number. "Boss, we're in position." What followed was a series of sounds of acknowledgement like yes and okay before he hung up. The 4 men's way of dressing and clothes were in the same non-mainstream style as the 3 men from yesterday. It didn't take much of a guess to see that these 4 were also Jack gang members. As expected, this trick can only be played twice. Lin Ke was rather frustrated. If it had been a bigger gang, he might have been able to go fishing a few more times. Jack gang was a gang that couldn't get any smaller in Sand City. In fact, their member count didn't even reach 100. In this gang, most were local ruffians and gangsters. There were quite a lot of small gangs like this that lived off the underground black market. Apart from collecting some protection fees in the streets, the only other thing they could do was try their luck at the underground black market. Whenever they encountered stupid and naive newbies like Forbes, these ruffians would devour them savagely by outnumbering them. When the 3 men discovered Forbes the day before, they had also reported that they had found a big prey to the gang. However, in the end, they had died in the back alley after only a short while. Jack gang's boss had then looked at a video of the subway station's entryway and locked on to Forbes. He originally intended to ask someone for a favor and get them to search for Forbes's whereabouts, but little did he think that the fellow would come again today. As such, he immediately arranged for some random thugs to intercept Forbes outside the black market's entryway and demand an explanation. "Look for somewhere to hide first," shouted the leader. The 4 men hid in the dark shadows at once, ready to ambush Forbes when he exited. It was just that they didn't know they had already fallen into the big trap set up by Lin Ke yet at this point. The army ants climbed onto them stealthily. Treasure Hunter Rat had the 4 men's precise locations in its grasp. At the edge of a residential building's rooftop was a burping sand condor, also keeping a close eye on the 4 men. Lastly, there was the phantom-like and quiet Lin Ke. One of the men hid behind an obstacle in front of Lin Ke. Since their target hadn't appeared yet, the man couldn't resist fishing out his cell phone. Light from the cell phone screen shone on his face, making him look fairly creepy. The person hiding opposite him cast a glance at his teammate. He saw his teammate's creepy face lit up by the light, as well as a hand and a silenced pistol which had absurdly appeared above his head. At 9:30 p.m., Forbes punctually returned to the subway station. It was just that it was a little strange because nobody was actually following behind him today. He was the only one in the old, worn-out mechanical elevator. Did I perform badly today? Forbes was rather nervous. He didn't know how he was going to answer Lin Ke later. He was the picture of a kid that hadn't scored well in an exam but had to bring the exam paper to his parents to get them to sign on it, nervous, helpless, and pitiful. Ding! Following the sound of the elevator coming to a complete stop, the indicator light changed from red to green. When Forbes walked out of the elevator, he was stunned immediately. 2s. Chapter 27, The Hunt Begins. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Lying in the faint, dim light from the elevator entrance were 4 thoroughly dead people. Forbes wasn't afraid of dead bodies. On the contrary, he was somewhat excited. After all, he came from a funeral service business. Dead bodies represented business and money to him. Right after that, Forbes noticed Lin Ke, who was squatting beside the corpses and rummaging through them. "Oh, you're out." Lin Ke took out his cell phone and glanced at the time, 9:31 p.m. The time was just right. "Boss, nobody followed after me today. I didn't manage to bait any fish." In response, a smiling Lin Ke pointed at the 4 corpses on the floor and replied, "They're all here. People don't necessarily need to follow after you to be considered fishes." Forbes looked thoughtful at his words. After staring at the corpses for a while, realization dawned upon him. He pointed at the 4 corpses on the floor and asked, "Boss, do you mean that these 4 people stayed at the entrance to intercept me? If not, then what do you think they were doing?" Excitement burst forth from Forbes's initially dull and gloomy eyes at once. He trotted over to Lin Ke in high spirits and asked, "Did you find anything good on them then, boss?" Lin Ke, who was already done with the battleground cleanup, got to his feet and replied, "It's not safe here. Let's talk on the way out." Those 4 men had been on the phone with the Jack Gang's leader before the ambush. Should the Jack Gang's leader not receive any news from them for a long period of time, he'd definitely become suspicious and bring his men out to check on the situation. The 2 of them walked out of the back alley. Forbes was just about to go down the path and leave when Lin Ke grabbed him. He waved the car key in his hand. "Let's drive back today." He then pressed the unlock button on the car key. The headlights and tail lights of a car at the roadside started to blink. The car also emitted a beep, indicating that it'd been unlocked. Wow! Excitement was written all over Forbes's countenance. Disregarding the other time when he was hiding in the desert jeep's trunk, this was his first time actually sitting in a vehicle. The Jack Gang foursome's car was just like the owners themselves. Every part of it gave off a wild and arrogant air. The vintage sedan had a long, slender body, and its sides were emblazoned with the words Jack Gang and the image of dancing flames. It looked swift, fierce, and exaggerated. Lin Ke slipped into the driver's seat, inserted the key, and started the car. Vroom! Lin Ke's shoulders lifted slightly, a look of surprise on his face. "Those guys sure know how to have a good time. I didn't think that they'd actually stuff such a powerful heart into this antique." Lin Ke secretly apologized to the 4 men mentally. The foursome had looked like sinisters, but little did he expect that they were actually rather fastidious in their taste when it came to cars. They'd gotten themselves a classic, vintage sedan, but installed within was a roaring beast instead, a V8 motor. If he could find somewhere to offload it, this car was worth at least 40,000 to 50,000 wastelands coins. However, the difficulty level of offloading this thing was a little high. After all the modification garages in Sand City were backed by gangs. Driving this car somewhere to offload it was basically the same as delivering oneself into a trap. It wasn't that the Jack Gang held that much influence, but rather, it was because the other party could tell that the car was stolen from elsewhere with just a glance. Since they could just cash in on a fellow villain, why should they take any money out of their own pockets? 1. Forbes sat in the passenger seat excitedly. Lin Ke rolled down the car window, and Sand Condor swooped right into the car, crashing headfirst into the meticulously maintained genuine leather seats. Treasure Hunter Rat buried its head into the genuine leather seats and rolled about in comfort, awfully thrilled. Look, even it could tell that this car was good stuff. Lin Ke drove the car out. The sounds of the V8 engine were perfectly adjusted. The roar that the engine produced when he stepped on the gas pedal stirred his blood as if it resonated with him, making him feel as though he and the car had become one. Lin Ke tapped his hand against the steering wheel. He was so fond of the car that he could hardly tear himself away from it. Sand condor rested against the rear door. Its long neck leaned out of the window, hanging outside of it. With every turn of a corner, its head swayed back and forth, waving about with the wind. Sand condor looked very much like a wastrel that was drowning their sorrows over relationship woes with alcohol. As for treasure hunter rat, it sat with one leg crossed over the other. Its back also laid against the genuine leather seats. It sat in repose with its eyes closed, acting totally like a big boss, as if the driving Lin K and the CO driver Forbes were its chauffeur and henchman. 1. Apart from the silver army ants that had already turned into metal, both of Lin K's two other pets were drama queens. Lin K had previously been thinking about offloading the car. However, upon seeing how smoothly he drove, it was like an extension of his body, and he and the car had merged as one. He abolished the thought right away. However, judging from the mission's difficulty level, he still had a need to continue staying in Sand City for a while. Moving around Sand City's slums alone was already enough to break someone's legs. It was honestly inconvenient without a car. Well, someone had given him exactly what he wanted now. How could Lin K possibly bring himself to turn them down, right? As for the terribly conspicuous Jack Gang mark on the car, Lin K didn't care much about it. The Jack Gang might be small, but it was still a gang in the slums at least. The logo and mark on the car could also help to scare off some car thieves and hooligans. As for the Jack Gang finding their way to him through the car, wasn't that even better? It saved Lin K the trouble of having to find them himself. 1. On the way back, Lin K made a rough mention about their rewards today. He had found a total of over 8,000 wastelands coins on the four men. Judging from the amount, they had probably just collected protection money from some street and had made an impromptu trip over, so they hadn't even had time to give the money to their higher UPS. Their 4 handguns were intact and in passable condition, so they could fetch 1,000 to 2,000 wastelands coins. Last but not least was the Jack-o'-lantern V8 Classic sedan. Driving it down the slums roads instantly made him feel as though he was above the rest. Lin K went over to the ATM machine by the road. He deposited the larger bills into the card and kept the small change for daily expenses. 21,000 wastelands coins have been credited to your bank card ending with 2,234 on April 17, 22:03 p.m. You currently have a balance of 102,240 wastelands coins. Upon seeing the SMS notification which told him that his balance had broken through the $100,000 milestone, a hint of a smile involuntarily appeared at the corners of Lin K's lips. He was getting closer and closer to his target now. After depositing the money, Lin K casually bought some snacks and supper to reward the extras in the film crew. He then drove the car back to the inn. The Jack Gang's infamy still proved itself very useful. Lin K pressed on the car horn the whole way back. The passers-by who had initially turned to look back furiously suppressed their anger and hastily ran a mile away at once when they saw the Jack Gang logo on the car, saving Lin K quite a bit of trouble. There were no parking lots by the road at the inn, so Lin K decided to park the car opposite the road instead. This way, he could have a clear view of it, even when he was upstairs in his room. 1. On the way back, Forbes also passed Dave's message to Lin K. "All right, noted. I'll personally handle the transaction myself tomorrow," replied Lin K. He knew very well that he couldn't play the fishing trick for too long. What he was after was money. He didn't want to trigger all sorts of disputes and end up impeding his plans. Thus, he decided that he'd just pack the remaining 3 microchips up and directly sell them away tomorrow. Forbes had smartened up today and went to bed early. As long as he was dead asleep, he wouldn't be awakened by the women's screams at night anymore. Lin K tucked his hands behind his head, contemplating how he should deal with Alonzo and Moros. The light breeze blowing through the window felt very comfortable. It was as if a gentle, tender woman constantly behaved coquettishly and cajoled him into sleeping by his ear. Squeak, squeak. Treasure hunter rat suddenly sounded a warning anxiously. What? Someone's trying to steal the car. Without a second word, Lin Ke hopped off the bed. He went over to the window and looked out. With the roadside light illuminating the area, Lin Ke saw a group of non-mainstream scenesters surrounding his beloved car. Judging by the logos on them, every one of them was from the Jack gang. The men didn't leave after they found the car. On the contrary, they turned around and glanced at the small 7-story building Lin Ke was in and gestured to it. They then crossed the road and approached the inn. Lin Ke did a quick count. There were a total of 10 people. To think they've actually found their way here. Lin Ke grabbed his jacket, shrugged it on, and began to check whether there were ample bullets in the ammo clips. Little treasure, wake Forbes up. Treasure hunter Rat immediately leaped onto Forbes's face and began to practice the military boxing fist1 on him. 2. Both Lin Ke's pistol and tactical machine pistol were equipped with silencers. After hanging both weapons on the gun sling, he took out the pump-action shotgun from underneath the bed. There's usually no need for this big guy when I'm out, but it has finally come in handy now. It wasn't like Lin Ke hadn't expected the Jack gang to come after him, he just didn't expect that they'd move this fast or that there would be so many of them. 1. He loaded the pump-action shotgun full in one go, the snap of the magazine being loaded crisp and clear. Lin Ke grabbed Sand Condor by its neck and shook it awake. Sand Condor, the corridors aren't advantageous in bringing out your abilities. Go to the top of the building and stay there to wait for my command. The army ants on the floor had already stirred themselves up according to Lin Ke's wishes. They followed his instructions and filed into a line. They then climbed into a slot in the sling under his flax top. The silver army ants were currently Lin Ke's biggest insurance. If he couldn't guarantee complete annihilation of the enemy, he'd never deploy them. Besides, shotguns were invincible when fighting in a narrow, cramped space like this, okay? 2. Forbes was woken up by Treasure Hunter Rat's mad flurry of punches, and he swung off the bed, causing Treasure Hunter Rat to be flung out with great force. Fortunately, Lin Ke grabbed hold of it with his quick reflexes. It was then that Forbes noticed that Lin Ke had already fully geared up at some point and was holding a shotgun while half squatting on the floor. Boss, you. SHH. Don't talk. Hurry and get dressed. Forbes was still in a daze, but he tiptoed upon seeing Lin Ke's actions and began to get dressed. Treasure Hunter Rat jumped off Lin Ke's arm and quickly scurried over to the door. It squatted in the corner, perked its ears up, and listened closely, constantly reporting the enemy's positions to Lin Ke. Soon, Lin Ke also heard the wild footsteps coming up the stairs. They were so loud and violent that it seemed like they were beating drums and clanging gongs as they walked. The group of men must have already gotten a hold of our room number and are coming straight for us. Lin Ke slowly got up. He stood at a spot roughly a meter away from the door, aiming the shotgun's pitch-black double gun barrels right at it. The fierce, violent footsteps abruptly stopped after they reached the 4th floor, making it seem as though the sounds from before were all just figments of one's imagination. Little treasure, you can come back now. Treasure Hunter Rat ran back to Lin Ke from the door. It scrabbled at Lin Ke's trousers, climbed back into the gun sling, and joined the silver army ants. The light from the corridor shone into the room from under the door. Soon, shadows entered Lin Ke's sight and blocked out the light. They were already at the door. This is room 505. Does anyone know how to unlock it? Come over and open the door. Nobody knows how to unlock it. We can just charge right in. It's dark inside, so they must be asleep. If all we charge in at once, he definitely won't be able to react in time. All right. Stand back, all of you. I'll kick the door open. The men outside had kept their voices low and whispered to each other to avoid rousing Lin Ke from his sleep. However, they never ever would have expected that Lin Ke had been expecting them for a long time. Since the large group had dropped in on him so passionately in the middle of the night, how could Lin Ke not give them a bit of a surprise as the host? Bam! A boar from the Jack gang kicked the wooden door open with his foot. Just as he was about to charge in, the light from the corridor spilled into the room. With his shotgun raised, a brazen smile appeared on the corners of Lin Kei's lips. Surprise, mother ***. 5. Boom. Dazzling sparks burst forth from the shotgun's muzzles, and the muscular man standing at the entrance took the full brunt of the 2 shotgun shells in the gun barrels. The shot caused his body to explode into pieces, and he became badly mangled. 2s. Chapter 28, Gunfight in the Inn. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. All the eager Jack gang thugs ready to charge into the room were dumbstruck. An alive and kicking human was gone, just like that. The one that had volunteered to kick the door open was also the most muscular one among the 10 of them. Yet, he had died in the twinkling of an eye. What exactly is the meaning of this? Lin Kei was less than 2 meters away from the thugs, and the double-barreled shotguns might have been brilliantly showcased at this range. Not a single steel pellet had struck the walls after the shotgun shells exploded. The thug had taken all of them. The thug's head was just like an exploding watermelon after it took the shot. Scarlet blood squirted everywhere, and his head broke apart and flew about like watermelon rinds. His chest caved in directly, and all his ribs were blown up into pieces. His heart, lungs, spleen, and stomach had also all disintegrated from the impact, splattering all over the walls. Blood and bits of internal organs splattered all over the thugs' faces and bodies. They had initially been eager to charge into the room, but their minds were buzzing and totally blank now. The scene that resulted because of the gunshot was simply too savage. Even the corners of Lin Kei's lips couldn't help but spasm somewhat. However, was he to be blamed for this? Who told that guy to be so close to the door? Lin Kei took advantage of the momentary lapse before the Jack gang thugs regained their senses to run in immediately and chase after them, and pressed the gun muzzle against one of the thugs' chests. Boom! The thug was thrown out at once. A hole was blown right through his chest, and a mist of blood sprayed from his back. -110. The damage had doubled due to the bullets striking the vitals. The shot had gone straight into excess damage. You've killed a level 5 ruffian and gained 250 EXP x2. When had the other thugs ever seen a bloody kill like this? They should have been the ones conducting the ambush and performing a divine soldiers descending from the heavens scene. However, little did they think that Lin Kei had already set up an ambush a long time ago, resulting in the 2 shots frightening them out of their minds. The ones at the back immediately turned tail and rushed down the stairs while firing aimlessly. Lin Kei immediately retreated into the room after firing his second shot. Although the 2 gunshots he had fired exhibited great momentum and style, the pump-action shotgun's flaw cropped up reloading was comparatively more time-consuming. The sound of indiscriminate gunshots in the corridor whizzed past his ears, followed closely by the crisp sound of wood splintering after being struck. As Lin Kei leaned against the door, he swung open the shotgun's barrel and began to load the shells into the gun. The clacks of shotgun shells being loaded were full of tempo and highly rhythmic. Forbes, who was clutching his trousers, was stupefied by what he saw. Never would he have ever imagined that a gunfight would actually break out in the middle of the night. "What do we do now, boss?" asked a wide-eyed Forbes, whose countenance was filled with fear. Snap! When Lin Kei finished loading the gun, he pushed the shotgun's forearm backward and replied, "We fight our way out." The other thugs had already been scared out of their wits after Lin Kei got rid of 2 of them upon meeting them face to face. All of them were level 5 ruffians, so they didn't pose much of a threat to Lin Kei. "I'll open up a path. Stay here and wait for my signal." With the shotgun raised, Lin Kei walked out of the room. Forbes picked up the backpack slickly and squatted at the entrance, waiting for Lin Kei to clear out the corridor. The Jack gang thugs had all withdrawn into the 5th floor stair landing. They were so terrified that they were panting heavily. Their voices also were shrill as they cursed softly. ***CK, we've been discovered. To think that guy actually has a shotgun with him. The men's faces and bodies were covered in blood. Bits of flesh were even hanging from their bodies. The mix of the stench of blood and other unpleasant odors was nauseating. What do we do now? We were just careless just now and ended up allowing him to strike first. Despite being alone, he was at an advantage because of his weapon. However, we'll make use of our advantage in numbers to seize the momentum now. Shotguns are slow to reload. We'll make use of the reload interval to catch him off guard. After the few of them decided on a countermeasure, they heard the floorboards in the corridor creaking. Lin Ke advanced step by step. The pump-action shotgun had a capacity of 4 shells, meaning that it could only fire twice with its double barrels. Therefore, it was imperative that Lin Ke reach the end of the corridor within 2 shots. What's with the goddamn ruckus in the middle of the night? Are you trying to prevent all of us from sleeping or what? Lin Ke could hear footsteps getting nearer and nearer to the door of the room in front. The footsteps were very heavy and loud, and every step carried an air of resentment. The Jack Gang thugs at the stair landing could also hear the sounds, and their eyes lit up at once. This sudden turn of events was a chance for them. Once the grumpy man in the room opened the door later, they would take the opportunity to crane their necks out and fire. Their opponent could only deal with one of the 2 parties at a time. They would see what he was going to do about that. Lin Ke's brows furrowed slightly. Am I too down on my luck or what? Someone is always disrupting things for me during critical moments like this. He swiftly hung the pump-action shotgun's gun strap over himself. He then propped the shotgun stock against his hip and leaned backward slightly. He rested a hand on the trigger and held it up using just his left hand. Then, he quickly fished out the Glock 17 with his right hand and held it in his grip, pointing the muzzle at the door in front. Creak! The furious guest opened the door as he ranted, his temper as obstinate as an ox. Mother ***. Tonight, I shall see who exactly is the one disturbing my beauty sleep in the middle of the night. The moment he opened the door, a gun muzzle equipped with a silencer pressed right against his forehead. It's actually even a baldy. Upon hearing this, the Jack Gang thugs at the end of the corridor immediately poked their heads out from the stair landing and began to fire. However, when they noticed Lin Ke holding up a shotgun with one hand while his other hand was holding a silenced pistol, their faces fell at once. Boom! A bunch of flames sprayed from the shotgun muzzles, and the shells exploded, scattering innumerable steel pellets about. The thugs who had only just stuck their heads out held their arms over their heads and scurried back to hide at the stair landing. Steel pellets landed on the walls and floor like water splashing about. Get the hell back inside! Lin Ke knocked the gun muzzle fiercely against the bald guest's forehead. Yes, yes! The bald guest's legs had already begun shaking in fear a long time ago. He nodded repeatedly and shut the door with stiff movements. Lin Ke continued forward. This time, both guns' muzzles were pointed at the stair landing at the end of the corridor. Had it been in the past, Lin Ke's frame wouldn't have been able to support dual gun wielding at all. However, his endurance was a whole 15 points now, so his body could totally withstand the gun's recoil as well as the lactic acid building up in both arms because of normal body reactions now. ***CK, that guy is actually dual wielding. We've let down our guard too much. What do we do now? He's reaching us soon. We'll fire unexpectedly and drive him back first. Then, we'll send 2 people to circle around from downstairs and then launch a pincer attack from the other end of the corridor. The Jack Gang thugs also reacted very quickly and came up with a pincer attack plan in no time. Immediately, 2 men headed downstairs to sneak around to the other side from the 4th floor and deal Lin Ke a lethal blow from the back. The remaining 6 continued to restrain Lin Ke from the front to buy time and prevent him from reaching the stair landing. With a shotgun in Lin Ke's possession, how were they supposed to fight him if they also allowed that guy to occupy the stair landing, which would give Lin Ke the topographical advantage? Treasure Hunter Rat, which was hiding on Lin Ke, also detected people heading downstairs and let out warning squeaks at once. Thinking of launching a pincer attack, hey, Lin Ke figured out the enemy's intentions right away. He continued to advance. However, it was at this moment where he saw a few hands, which were holding guns, extending out from behind the stair landing's walls suddenly. Damn! These guys are honestly too cowardly. They don't even bother poking their heads out any longer. They have chosen to stretch their arms out to fire directly and draw a lottery instead. There was nowhere to hide in the corridor. Lin Ke only had to be struck by a few of their lottery shots, and the thugs would definitely surround him after he was wounded. Although the thugs were about the same level as Lin Ke and weren't very strong individually, they were just like hyenas and moved in packs. The moment one revealed a bit of timidness or suffered any injuries, they would never let them off, even if their prey was a lion. Lin Ke jumped up and firmly pushed against the walls with his feet. By borrowing the force from his legs, he smashed his shoulder right against the room at the side's wooden door. Bang! 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 Boom! Bullets whizzed past Lin Ke's ears. In response, he smashed the door open and heavily crashed onto the floor together with the door. Oof! Lin Ke grimaced in pain. His arm hurt a little from the crash this time. Fortunately, his endurance was high enough, so he could bear with it. He got up from the floor and swung his arm around a couple of times. He then cast a sweeping glance around the room. He hadn't heard any screams or sounds when he crashed into the room, so he'd subconsciously assumed that the room was empty. However, Lin Ke discovered, to his astonishment, that someone was actually seated next to the window. The person was currently holding a drawing board and seriously sketching under the moonlight with his head lowered. The man didn't raise his head at all the entire time, as though drawing was the only thing that could attract his attention in the world. He was dressed in an exquisite and well-ironed black suit and sported stubble on his chin. Even his tie and brooch were properly put on with nothing out of place. Despite sketching in the dark by himself, there were no wrinkles or anything out of sorts with his clothes at all. What stood out even more was his long hair that reached his lower jaw. As he drew with his head half lowered, his hair blocked his side profile in a slightly disorderly fashion, making him look somewhat unruly. If one insisted on an exact description, then unconventional artist of noble conduct was the best description Lin Ke could come up with. It was hard to imagine that such a fastidious guest would actually be staying in a shabby, run-down inn like this. A sense of guilt arose within Lin Ke for disturbing the quiet artist absorbed in his creation with the gunfight in the corridor. He fished out a few $100s from his pocket and placed the money on the table. He then said, "Sorry for the disturbance." However, Lin Ke's attention very quickly left the artist in front of him because he'd heard treasure hunter rats warning the thugs at the stair landing were starting to approach quietly. Lin Ke put the pistol away after speaking. He then snapped the shotgun barrels open with a karate chop and loaded 2 shells into it. Snap! After Lin Ke slid the forearm back, he took a deep breath, turned around, and walked out of the room. The thugs who were hunched over and slinking along the walls immediately took aim upon sighting Lin Ke, ready to fire. However, Lin Ke's preparations were more complete, and his reaction was faster than theirs. Boom! Boom! 2 shots sprayed from the shotgun in succession, and another 2 men fell instantly. You've killed a level 5 ruffian and gained 250 EXP x2. At this point, Lin Ke didn't have the leisure to reload the shotgun anymore. He pressed the barrels down, swung the gun behind him, and carried it on his back. His hands then reached under the flax clothing and came back out with 2 additional guns, a tactical machine pistol in one and a silenced pistol in the other. Clack, clack, clack. The silenced tactical machine pistol fired at a low rate with a quick and lively tempo. Bullets sprayed outward like splashing water, beating back the thugs so badly that they couldn't retaliate at all. Amid the intense bee-like buzzing was also an occasional rhythmic whizzing. The tactical machine pistol gunned them down while the silenced pistol took them out target by target. The thugs collapsed like crops being reaped, and Lin Ke's EXP and basic marksmanship proficiency rose dramatically. In the blink of an eye, all 6 men had collapsed onto the corridor floor, their bodies riddled with holes like sieves and lying in puddles of blood. Lin Ke didn't search the corpses. Instead, he started to double back. He changed the tactical machine pistols and the Glock 17's ammo clips. He then reached out and picked up the shotgun on his back and reloaded it. Treasure hunter Rat suddenly let out a couple of squeaks at this point. Lin Ke pointed the shotgun muzzle down at the floor and pressed it against the wooden flooring. Boom, boom. 2 gunshots were fired in succession, and the screams of the thugs downstairs traveled up along the corridor. All right, just one left now. Let's go, Forbes. The scene and situation were instantly reversed. The 2 men downstairs who were intending to circle to the back and launch an ambush never expected that the other party would actually fire 2 shots through the floor. Shotguns were very powerful. The first shot had punched a hole through the wooden floor, while the second one had shot toward them and directly blew up one of the thugs' heads. It had also grazed the arm of the thug walking beside him. Who'd have thought that only 1 out of the 10 men who came here to ambush and capture their target remained after just a short period of time. The remaining thug's face was full of blood. Blood also trickled down his arm and dripped onto the floor from his fingertip. Just who exactly is that guy? This is practically a one-sided massacre. I have to run. The last man held his hand over the wound at his shoulder and quickly ran downstairs. Lin Ke also ran downstairs with the shotgun in his hands, his footsteps light and brisk as if he was dancing the tango. As for Forbes, he was carefully approaching the dead bodies. Lin Ke had told him that he needn't pick up things like guns and bullets anymore, but that he must still take their money. The thug exited the inn and ran toward the car. He had a spare key with him and was intending to escape by using the car. Lin Ke came chasing after him in no time. Right away, he noticed that the thug had already run over to the car. Boom, boom. Another 2 gunshots rang out. The scattering shotgun shells struck the thug in the back, the powerful impact killing him directly. At the same time, the Jack-o'-lantern V8 sedan's car alarms also went off. The gunshot had broken the windshield and left behind several steel pellet marks on the car hood. The corners of Lin Ke's twitched at the sight, his heart aching somewhat. The thug was still crawling forward with great effort, but with his injuries, he couldn't go far at all. Lin Ke followed after him leisurely. He switched to the silenced pistol and pointed it at the thug's head. Just as he was about to fire, the thug's cell phone rang. Whiz, whiz, whiz. Lin Ke finished off the thug with 3 shots. He then took out the cell phone, subsequently seeing the word boss displayed on the screen. When he picked up the call, the voice of the Jack Gang's leader immediately rang out. How is it? Have you gotten rid of him? Lin Ke cast a glance at the damaged Jack-o'-lantern V8 and suddenly opened his mouth. He then replied, they've damaged my car. The person on the other end of the phone suddenly fell silent. After a brief moment, the other party asked, did you kill them all? Lin Ke continued to speak as if he was muttering to himself. The glass is broken, and there are also bullet marks on the hood. It'll probably cost quite a bit to fix the car. F***ck, you're dead meat. The person on the other end of the phone sounded flustered and exasperated. 17 people had died one after another, yet they hadn't actually managed to kill the other party. Now, their enemy had even picked up his call and was uttering ridiculous and absurd things. Was he showing off? Let's talk about the compensation for the car instead. As if I'm goddamn paying for the compensation. Her. We'll meet very soon, Mr. Kong. Toot, toot, toot. Lin Ke disconnected the call. Elsewhere, in the Jack Gang's headquarters, an infuriated man in a gaudy red suit was so furious that he was almost amused. He held the phone and stretched his hands out as he said, Boss, that guy has taken me as old third. 2s. Chapter 29, His Target the Jack Gang. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. As Lin Ke touched the bullet holes on the car, a corner of his lips couldn't help but twitch. The Jack Gang thugs have actually reduced a perfectly good car like this to such a state. Didn't they have any sense of moderation when they fought? Oh, how my heart aches. What? Did you just say that I'm the one that battered the car? How can that be? I'm the man that has gotten basic marksmanship down pat. I wouldn't do something like aim my gun at the thug but end up shooting the car. Absolutely impossible. That's right. After Lin Ke fought his way out of the inn and finished off the last assassin with 3 gunshots, his basic marksmanship's progress bar had finally reached 100%. Together with the wonderful sound of a system notification reverberating in his mind, Lin Ke finally got his very first special ability. Basic Marksmanship LV1, Firearms Hit Rate plus 5%, Reloading Speed plus 10%, Firing Rate, plus 5%. After successfully unlocking Basic Marksmanship, Lin Ke couldn't resist showing off his one-handed reloading right away. He took out a full magazine from his gunsling and tossed it into the air. He then flicked the gun's current magazine off. The pistol spun around his fingers with a flourish before he gripped the pistol and aimed the magazine well at the falling magazine. With a clack, the magazine entered the magazine well. Lin Ke swiftly loaded the gun with a snap before spinning around and raising the pistol with both hands, aiming it behind him. Forbes had just run over to Lin Ke at this point. When Lin Ke suddenly raised the gun and pointed it at him, he was so frightened that he hastily held up both arms. "Don't fire, boss. It's me, Forbes." Smack. The Glock 17 returned to the gunsling. The corners of Lin Ke's lips couldn't help but quirk upward as he replied, "Of course, I know it's you." Lin Ke had always had these fancy reloading sequences tucked away in his memory. However, because he previously had yet to unlock basic marksmanship, he had lacked the extra 10% reloading speed. As a result, he couldn't perform such sequences at all. However, he could easily achieve a fancy one-handed reload now. "I unlocked basic marksmanship so quickly this time," Lin Ke thought emotionally to himself. He remembered that when he previously played Destiny for the first time, it'd taken him almost 500 shots before he'd managed to unlock basic marksmanship. That had been his first time playing the game back then, so he hadn't been able to fire accurately at anything at all. Not only did his aim have to be accurate, his proficiency would only increase when the bullets hit their targets, but he also needed to endure the firearm's recoil. However, ever since his rebirth, Lin Ke had basically been firing at the enemy's physical weaknesses at close range the whole time. When one hit an enemy's weaknesses, not only would they deal additional damage because of critical hits, but the proficiency increase would also double. This was also the reason why he had unlocked basic marksmanship so quickly this time. This was especially true under the circumstances where undercurrents surged in Sand City because he would encounter battles almost every day. The unlocked basic marksmanship had allowed Lin Ke's strength to advance yet another level. "Get in the car, Forbes." Forbes felt a little lost. "Aren't all the thugs already dead?" "Boss, where are we driving to?" Lin Ke unlocked the car with his key. The jack-o'-lantern V8's car lights blinked as it emitted a beep when the doors unlocked. Lin Ke patted the car hood and replied in a voice full of heartache, "The Jack Gang has damaged my beloved car so badly, so I'm obviously going over to seek reparation fees." Forbes let out a couple of howls and got into the passenger seat daftly. There were bullet marks on the car's window glass. The smooth and level transparent glass had already cracked like a dense spider web. Whitish gaps could also be seen all over the glass. This decision of Lin Ke's wasn't a willful one either. The Jack Gang was just an unremarkable gang among Sand City's third-rate gangs. Lin Ke initially thought that they would only be able to find their way here the next day at the earliest. However, to his surprise, they found his lodging the very same night. Since he'd already struck first in such a clear-cut manner, he might as well storm the Jack Gang's base and wipe out the whole gang. If he earned a round of profits along the way, he might be able to unlock the Universal Type class by tomorrow. "You've triggered the D-level mission, full extermination. Accept/reject." Mission prompt: the Jack Gang already knows you're lodging. They've already lost 17 members, so they definitely won't let this matter rest easily. Rather than resigning yourself to fate and waiting for them to come to you, you might as well take the initiative to strike and completely wipe the Jack Gang off the face of Sand City. Mission reward: 10,000 EXP. Accept. This is a mission that practically gives away EXP for free. Why shouldn't I accept it? Lin Ke had gained 2,500 EXP when he killed 10 level 5 ruffians in quick succession earlier. Although he had verbally talked down on his opponents and declared that he was outright storming their base, he still needed to go about it in a safe and steady manner nevertheless. Thus, Lin Ke looked at the 7,750 EXP in his EXP bar. He then glanced at his 50/150 HP before he wordlessly decided to level up. Leveling up from level 5 to level 6 will consume 2,800 EXP. Will you level up? Yes/no. Yes. Lin Ke's HP was restored after he leveled up. His arms and shoulders, which had been vaguely aching just now, were now free of pain. It felt like they had gotten a new lease on life. Lin Ke then took a look at his updated stats and was incredibly satisfied by what he saw. Name: Lin Ke. Race: Human. Level: 6. EXP: 4,950. Class: N/A. Status: Refugee, Mandala spokesperson. Health points: 150/150. Energy points: 40/40ths. Stats: Power: 3, Agility: 3, Endurance: 15, Intelligence: 4, Energy: 2, Charm: 1, Luck: 1. Latent capacity points: 6. Talent: N/A. Skills: N/A. Equipment: Sharp Dagger, white, Glock 17 pistol, white, Bezos T1 tactical machine pistol, white, pump action shotgun, white. Special abilities: Basic driving, 65%. Basic marksmanship LV1, firearms hit rate plus 5%, reloading speed plus 10%, firing rate, plus 5%. Appraisal: hehe, someone has shot his own beloved car. Lin Ke's smile had been getting wider and wider when he first looked at his stats panel. However, he started cursing in mind, though the smile remained on his face when he saw the last line where the system appraisal was. This system definitely doesn't have a mother. It must be a true blue orphan system. Now that he had leveled up, he was ready to head over to the Jack Gang's headquarters to do some posturing. Lin Ke got into the driver's seat. He reclined the seat, lifted his legs, and then kicked the windshield out. My feet may be the ones kicking, but my heart is the one that's aching. I'll definitely make the Jack Gang pay for ruining my car. After kicking the broken glass away, his field of vision immediately cleared up. Sand Condor swooped down from the top of the building and dove headfirst into the car from the windshield-less front. Treasure Hunter Rat also jumped out of the gunsling and returned to its exclusive seat, the back seat. Vroom! The car lights lit up, and the roar unique to the V8 engine sent Lin Ke's blood boiling just like a ball of fire. Lin Ke knew the Jack Gang's base like the back of his hand. He said, "Forbes, you don't need to go in when we reach the destination later. Stay outside and look after the car for me." "Okay, I'll definitely get the mission done." Forbes was overjoyed the moment he heard that he didn't need to go in and fight. He immediately promised to complete his task well. "Little treasure, Sand Condor, I'm counting on both of you later. If both of you perform well, I'll bring you guys to the uptown area tomorrow to have some red wine and beefsteak. You guys will get to experience what life is like in the upper-class society." Upon hearing this, even the usually lazy Sand Condor also began squawking in a rare show of emotion. Sit in a V8, drink red wine, eat beefsteak, and be an upper-class Sand Condor. Not bad, not bad. Late in the night, an engine roared to life, and wheels squealed as they rubbed against the ground. The car then turned and left the inn, its target the Jack gang. Nobody in the inn became angry or flew into a rage during this entire process. Although all of them had been in their rooms just now, they heard the earlier gunfight in the corridor very clearly. Even though they didn't know what the whole ruckus was about, a refugee wearing flax clothing had actually taken out every single one of the 10 Jack gang thugs. Fly into a rage? Who would dare to? It was only after Lin Ke drove off that some of them finally mustered the courage to open their doors and stick their heads out to see what had happened. However, a mere glance was enough to make them gasp in shock. The battlefield in the corridor was too damned thrilling. Blood, severed limbs, and guts were splattered everywhere. The scene was extremely horrifying. Many of them were so frightened that they shut their doors at once, lest they think back to what they'd just seen and end up with nightmares. However, one of the guests was not like the others. After finishing up the sketch in his hands, he stuffed his pencil into the suit's shirt pocket. His action was very strange because nobody ever used their suit pocket to store a sketching pencil. The man then walked over to the entrance, picked up the wooden door on the floor, and placed it upright at the side. When he went into the corridor, he merely cast a cursory glance at the 6 corpses stacked there, seemingly totally disinterested. The artist then moved in the opposite direction and approached room 505, where another 2 dead bodies laid on the floor. One of them had their chest punched right through. This corpse's bowels and other viscera were splattered all over the wall. The other corpse was in an even more exaggerated state, both his head and chest had been blown apart. The artist stepped past the dead bodies and went straight into room 505. As if he was entering a museum, he walked back and forth in the room as he looked around and examined the interior, occasionally reaching out and touching a few things here and there. Another set of footsteps rang out in the corridor. The wooden floor emitted creaks as the owner of the footsteps walked through the corridor. In a small inn like this where all sorts of messy dealings took place, the artist wasn't the only gutsy person around. The other person also crept down the corridor. He mentally reconstructed the earlier battle through the corpses and bullet marks. The excessively curious person then noticed a room with a wide-open entrance. In other words, the room that Lin Ke had crashed into using his shoulder earlier. The person walked into the room. Moonlight spilled onto the desk, immediately making one notice the sketch draft resting on the desk. He picked up the sketch. It was surprisingly one of Lin Ke holding up a shotgun in one hand and a Glock in the other. The dramatic and harsh drawing style and expression techniques vividly and thoroughly displayed the scene that had taken place in the corridor earlier. The person holding the sketch frowned deeply. The guest was in the room the whole time, so how did reconstruct the earlier battle so thoroughly? It is practically an exact portrayal of the earlier battle. Whose work is this exactly? His gaze shifted to the signature at the sketch's lower left corner. The person holding the sketch gasped in shock immediately. What? To think it's actually him. Before he could fully utter his words, a large hand suddenly appeared behind him without him realizing it. It then clamped over his mouth in a death grip. It seems like you've found out about it. A lazy, low, masculine voice rang out. The person whose mouth was currently being covered widened his eyes to their limit. They were so wide that they couldn't get any bigger. His body violently trembled all over, and he frantically shook his head as if he'd just seen the Grim Reaper. Ugh, he desperately wanted to say something, but his mouth had been covered so tightly that he couldn't utter even a single word. I know what you want to say. You want to say that you'll keep this matter to yourself and that you won't ever tell anyone about it. The frightened person frantically nodded in response. Only a short few seconds had passed, yet large beads of perspiration had already formed on his forehead and were trickling down his forehead rapidly. The messy-haired artist leaned in from the back, lightly positioned his head against the other party's ear, and whispered in a low voice. Sorry, but this is a secret mission. He'd only just spoken when his other hand moved lightning quick. A long, narrow object suddenly impaled the other party's lower jaw and passed through his head, fully piercing into the curious man's brain. No sound was made at all. In fact, the artist even supported the curious man's body as it went limp, he then laid it down gently. The artist didn't cast a second glance at the corpse. Instead, he tidied the sketches on the table and placed them in his file. He then dragged his suitcase and left the inn soundlessly, just like how he'd soundlessly arrived here. If one insisted on pointing out some kind of change, then it was when he left. The drawing pencil was missing from his suit pocket. 3s. Chapter 30, Massacre. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. The Jack-o'-lantern V8 raced the whole way, as swift as the wind. At 11 p.m., the number of cars on the main street had already started to lessen and become scarce. As engine sounds traveled through the streets, Lin Ke became the exact person he himself hated the most: a noise generator blasting sound waves through the whole street while driving a sports car. The Jack Gang's base was located near Sand City's River Channel intersection and Boat Quay. Sand City's River Channel was separated into two. The bigger one led straight into the uptown area. In other words, where the wealthy congregated. The smaller one flowed through the slums where factory waste, coupled with discharged wastewater, turned it into a sewage channel that reeked to the high heavens and got on everyone's nerves. The Jack Gang's base just so happened to be close to the fork that split the river channel into two. Of course, the tiny Jack Gang wouldn't have been able to seize a critical site like this by themselves. However, behind every small gang was a big gang's shadow. Every big gang held considerable influence in Sand City. The powerful backers behind the Jack Gang were in charge of shipping goods via water transport. This was why the Jack Gang, a small gang under the big gang's command, could use a place near the water channel as a base. The Jack-o'-lantern V8 roared the whole way as Lin Ke drove. The further north he drove, the more beautiful and prosperous the slums became. A few high-rise buildings even appeared. Even though the slums were known as such, the degree of affluence in the area gradually increased according to the tiers nevertheless. With a glorious drift, Lin Ke parked the Jack-o'-lantern V8 at the roadside. It was just that the glorious drift had concluded with the entire car hitting the curb instead because he hadn't unlocked basic driving yet. As expected, skills are to be respected, Lin Ke then said to Forbes, "Wait for me in the car. Keep a lookout with the rear view and side view mirrors. If you discover anything amiss, come and look for me in the alley." Following that, Lin Ke also added, "Keep your wits about you." Forbes nodded incessantly and kept Lin Ke's words in mind. His eyes bore into the rear view and side view mirrors as he kept his hands on the door so that he could open the door immediately and rush to the alley by the road when he discovered unusual activity. Lin Ke held Sand Condor by its neck and lifted it out of the car. "Hey, wake up! It's time to get to work." Sand Condor woke up dazedly and flapped its wings, swiftly soaring into the sky. Maybe it was because it hadn't completely woken up yet, but it crashed headfirst into the wall of the high-rise building beside them after it took flight. It ended up in a fairly pathetic state. 1. Lin Ke's gaze swept across the street, left and right. Fortunately, he found that no one had witnessed that embarrassing scene. Treasure Hunter Rat held its paws over its face, clearly acting as if it didn't know Sand Condor. Sand Condor stood at the building's edges and clung onto it, only coming back to its senses after recuperating for a while. It then flew into the night sky and started its reconnaissance. The Jack Gang's base wasn't underground. Instead, it was a single-story building connected to other residential buildings. The single-story building spanned over 300 square meters. One end was even beside the riverbed, so one could admire the uptown area's wonderful scenery across the river at night. The uptown area's towering high-rise buildings and neon lights were just like addictive drugs, constantly stimulating the desires in one's heart. 2 minutes later, Sand Condor reappeared in the night sky and swooped downward. It landed on Lin Ke's forearm and reported the single-story building's situation. Lin Ke knew that Sand Condor didn't have that great of a memory, so he had only made it survey the situation at the entrance. The hardest place to infiltrate in the Jack Gang's base was the entrance. If there were a large number of thugs stationed at the entrance, Lin Ke would have had to do the surprise visit from the building next to the Jack Gang's base. However, Sand Condor reported that it had seen only 2 sentries at the entrance. This meant that infiltrating Jack Gangs couldn't get any easier. Forbes sat in the car, his whole body tense and tightly wound. His eyes flickered back and forth between the rear view and side view mirrors, ready to make a run for it any moment. He soon saw Lin Ke enter the alley, and the dark shadows swallowed his entire form. Sand Condor flew to the top of the high-rise building and closed its eyes in repose as it awaited further orders. Now that Lin Ke had entered the shadows, it was showtime for Treasure Hunter Rat. Squeak, squeak. The closer they got to the Jack Gang's base, the more detailed the information Treasure Hunter Rat gave to Lin Ke became. Sand Condor didn't mess up this time. There were indeed only 2 people at the entrance. In fact, there were only a small number of thugs in the hall. Lin Ke felt a little confused about this. By right, there should be over 100 members in the Jack Gang. Even if I did kill more than 10 of them, the current number of people in the base doesn't make sense either. However, since the information was provided by Treasure Hunter Rat, then there definitely is no mistake about it. Currently, fewer than 30 people were in the base. Additionally, their defense was lax and vulnerable. It seemed like they truly didn't expect anyone to come creating trouble all by themselves. Lin Ke initially thought that this would be a lion's den, where he would be ambushed on all sides. However, in the end, is this all there is? Isn't this no different from waltzing in as if I own the place? Lin Ke didn't know whether he should be laughing or crying at this. The reason for his tears was because that bunch of people had really treated his words like water off a duck's back. When he said we'll meet very soon, he hadn't been giving empty threats, he really did intend to come. As for the reason behind his laughter, Lin Ke wanted to laugh because their defenses were so lax that he felt that he could infiltrate even their internal structure without anyone realizing. Even though he didn't know the reason behind the base's drastic reduction in manpower, this was a positive thing for Lin Ke in the end. Lin Ke squatted at the corner of the wall, a mere dozen or so meters away from the Jack Gang's main entrance. "All right, it's your turn to perform now," said Lin Ke as he caressed Treasure Hunter Rat's head. At times like this, it was necessary for the king of actors to make its move and attract everyone's attention. As for offensive strength, I'm counting on you guys. Lin Ke had held nothing back and brought all 3,000 silver army ants with him this time. Treasure Hunter Rat rubbed its cheeks in resignation. By right, it should have been able to earn a living through its strengths, so why was it always being asked to sell its sex appeal? 4. Lin Ke reached out and flicked his fingers against Treasure Hunter Rat's waist, directly pushing it out from behind the wall. Treasure Hunter Rat got down on the ground extremely unwillingly and moved toward the Jack Gang's main entrance. The process that came after was incredibly simple. Treasure Hunter Rat reported the situation to Lin Ke through its squeaks. At the same time, it also attracted the attention of the sentries at the entrance. The intelligent-looking Treasure Hunter Rat instantly attracted the 2 men's attention. They didn't notice in the slightest that silver army ants had already crawled all over their backs at some point. Flying ants charged into the sentries' mouths with pinpoint accuracy and devoured their vocal cords immediately. 1. Lin Ke appeared from the corner and took advantage of the interval when the 2 sentries fell to the ground and rolled about while clutching their throats to wrap his flax clothing around the silenced gun muzzle. A couple of whizzes later, he had ended their lives with 2 gunshots. Lin Ke had suppressed the sounds during infiltration to the minimum. The 2 men didn't manage to make any other sound during the entire process, aside from the grunts the 2 sentries had made with their throats. This was Lin Ke's first time bringing all the silver army ants out with him during an operation. The results 3,000 army ants had when cooperating with each other was unbelievable. The army ants left the 2 men like a receding tide and assembled next to them. They lined up into 3 teams: worker ants, soldier ants, and flying ants. Their formations squarish like large CPU processors, where the ants themselves were the pins on the CPU. Lin Ke squatted down, seized the two men's pistols, and stuffed them into his gun sling. The firearms used by all the gangs came in a varied assortment. Apart from modern semi-automatic pistols, they even carried revolvers too. Lin Ke wasn't a picky eater. A hard battle awaited him later, so he had to reduce his reloading time as much as possible. 1. Listen up now. All army ants, I order you to destroy the power system in Jack Gang's base. Whether it's electric cables or light bulbs, I want to see all the lights in the hall extinguished within a minute. The Silver Army ants got down to work right after Lin Ke gave the command. Every flying ant carried one soldier ant and one worker ant on their back. In teams of 3, they formed a silver screen in midair and swiftly closed in on the Jack Gang's large single-story building. In no time, the worker ants and soldier ants entered the Jack Gang's base. Some of the remaining thugs in the hall were smoking as they played card games. Some were drinking, some were watching TV, and some were playing with their cell phones, etc. For them, midnight was their time to rest and party. After a day's work of collecting all the rent, they returned to the base to eat and drink. Although chaos still ran rampant in the slums every day, the situation there had basically already settled. Every gang also had their own turf and property. After innumerable battles and contests with each other, things had already reached a balance. Thud. 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 Lin Ke stood guard at the entrance. As sounds of electrical wire connections short-circuiting rang out, all the lights in the hall went out. The hall fell into darkness as the army ants soundlessly severed all the lighting's electrical wires with their teeth. Various fierce curses and rants could be heard coming from the hall. What the f***ck? Why is there a blackout in the middle of the night? Don't any of you touch the cards. If anyone takes advantage of the darkness to cheat, I'll chop off your damned paws. The electric circuits have probably worn out again. It's an old issue, so don't worry. I'll go and connect the generator. The only light source in the whole hall at the moment was the glow from everyone's cell phone screens. In particular, the group playing cards had the most cell phone light concentrated there. Several people also went over and jokingly egged the people at the card table to hurry and switch the cards. If not, they would lose their chance after the generator was activated. However, none of them knew that danger was currently descending upon them quietly. Attack, Silver Army ants! The army ants swiftly congregated from various spots. They then fell onto the thugs from the ceiling like falling leaves. Did something just fall? Several thugs felt something landing on their heads and bodies. One of them flashed the light from his cell phone over, only to see army ants with a metallic luster all over their bodies in the end. What the hell? Why are there army ants in the base? Without waiting for them to react, Lin Ke charged into the Jack Gang's base like a ghost. With the tactical machine pistol in one hand and the Glock 17 in the other, the flood of bullets spilling forth was like a soul-summoning song played by the Grim Reaper. Lin Ke pointed his guns at those holding their cell phones and killed them right away. As for those hidden in the dark, their positions were even clearer to Lin Ke. With Treasure Hunter Rat directing him, and the Silver Army ants outlining their silhouettes, Lin Ke was crystal clear on their positions despite being unable to see them. A round of gunfire later, the tactical machine pistol's ammo clip was emptied, and the Glock 17 jammed. In Lin Ke's vision, a series of pale blue damage indicators popped up in the hall. Lin Ke was also spammed by message prompts. You've used the Bezos T1 tactical machine pistol and struck the ruffian, causing 28 damage points. You've used the Bezos T1 tactical machine pistol and struck the ruffian's vitals, causing a critical hit. You have dealt 47 damage points and inflicted the bleeding effect. You've used the Bezos T1 tactical machine pistol and struck the ruffian's calf, causing 24 damage points and the slow effect. You've used the Glock 17 pistol and struck the ruffian's head, causing 115 lethal damage points. Lin Ke somersaulted and took cover behind something as he reloaded. The thugs in the hall fled about in panic and took cover one by one, unable to understand what was happening at all. What the bloody f***ck? What exactly is going on? Are we under attack from other gangs? My A** has split apart. 3. The hall was in utter chaos. In just an instant, Lin Ke had finished reloading. He then went about in the hall. The army ants launched their attacks at the same time, causing the thugs taking cover to scream in extreme pain. They didn't even care about the risk of getting shot and got up to smack the ants off their bodies. Some even rolled about on the floor as they screamed. In an instant, these hooligans, which usually exploited the common people and bullied the townsfolk, had all turned into lambs awaiting slaughter. Lin Ke charged out from his cover. Sparks suddenly appeared from his gun muzzle, lighting up his slightly young but icy cold visage. 2s.